Good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming to my regular Wednesday therapy session. I appreciate your participation in this. You're going to keep me sane and happy and all kinds of stuff. First, a couple of quick announcements. Andrew Seidel was supposed to be on the show tonight. He messaged me Monday to apologize. I think most of you can imagine how busy he is in this current climate. We hope to get him back on soon. He apologized. We'll get him back on. There's no issue. It's just this is a hectic time. And he realized late on Sunday that he just wasn't going to be able to make the show tonight. But we're lucky that fellow line host Josie Caballero is here. We'll get her in here in a minute to talk about this stuff. Next week, there may or may not be a show. And let me explain real quick. I want there to be. I'm heading out on Tuesday I'm flying to go have oral surgery. And then Wednesday, I fly home and my plane lands about the time I would normally be sitting down an hour before the show to prep. I have no idea what kind of shape I'm going to be in. I don't know if it's going to be possible for me to do a show on Wednesday after having half of my teeth removed. But we'll have more on that next week. If I'm feeling good, I will definitely do a show. I think it's probably going to be about JD Vance, but who knows what might happen between now and then. Let's get to this week. First of all, if you watch the Sunday shows, Jimmy had posted a video that we ran at the beginning of the show explaining his rules and his thoughts on what will and won't be discussed here on the line. And there's tons and tons of good reasons for that. Just go back to the beginning of the Sunday show or the Sunday show after dark. You can watch that. We on the line are not going to be spending time on calls entertaining conspiracy theories related to the assassination attempt. And we are not going to be spending any time on any support for violence or calls to violence or advocating for or shrugging off or just being okay with violence. Just not going to happen. If you call in and try to talk about this, you're going to get shut down right away. And if you persist, it's not going to work out because that call will just be muted or deleted from the show in the long run because we can't risk this channel on some lunacy. Now, that's part of what I'm going to talk about real quick. I have seen and commented on, and I think I'm just going to have to remove myself from most social media for a while because without calling any names, and I'm sure that none of the wonderful people who have already tuned in to watch this show are part of the problem, but man, there's a bunch of unskeptical, uncritical thinking buffoons on the left side advocating for conspiracies left and right, and it's exhausting. Now, I have seen some things that are fine. Like there's mocking. That is incredibly cathartic. And, you're on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and you're poking fun at something. It's fine. You probably hate or despise Trump or what he stands for or whatever else. And so you have thoughts and you want to mock. That is incredibly cathartic. Just make sure that you're not doing it in a way that disparages the individual who was killed or the other people who are wounded, or that puts you in a position of supporting conspiracies or advocating for violence. So post your funnies, exercise your free speech, definitely spread mirth and humor. But it's one thing to make a joke about the bandage on his ear looking like a MyPillow. That could be funny. It's another to spin conspiracies by saying that's not the sort of bandage that a doctor would put on someone. First of all, you don't know who put it on or not. Second of all, you're probably not a doctor because I haven't seen too many doctors say there was anything wrong with that. Stop pretending you're an expert. Once again, we're in a position where a terrible thing has happened. And people have their suspicions. And also, people seem to suddenly be experts in medicine, sniping, AR-15s, Secret Service protocols, police protocols, photography, ballistics, blood splatter. And they're running around spreading misinformation without checking anything. So first of all, if you're not familiar, there's a website called Snopes. I am not saying that Snopes is always right or that Snopes is the fact-checking center of the universe, but it's a good start. If you hear something and you want to find out if it's legit, you can go there because there are people who are researching there and putting the information there as in, here's our best understanding of what's actually real. If you cite Twitter and Twitter posts, you better redirect to the actual source. I've had people come at me saying, look, here's this person, this reporter from Newsmax, that said they heard something from the Secret Service about this. Well, first of all, you need to go to the actual source. If the police or the Secret Service have something to say, they're going to hold a press conference, or it's going to be officially reported in news sources, not just in a tweet about what somebody's hearing. And generally, police and Secret Service don't comment on ongoing investigations. So you're going to get some information, and it's going to come in an official capacity. And if it doesn't come in that official capacity, you should be dubious of it at best. And you should definitely not be sharing it as if it were true. Early on, the wrong name and photograph for the shooter was reported. Early on, people were claiming that he wasn't hit by a bullet. He was hit by a shard of glass from the teleprompter. Well, it turns out the teleprompters weren't hit at all. And there's a photograph. And all the available evidence suggests that that's actually a bullet that glanced off of his head. Then there's reports that, after getting shot, he didn't miss his tea time the next morning. Well, first of all, he did not go golfing on Sunday. The picture that was shared was from a different day, and that report has already been debunked. But what if he had? I find it to be an incredibly ridiculous double standard. If, in fact, President Biden had been the one who had a bullet glance off of his head, and then he got up and went golfing or riding his bike the next day, people would be applauding and cheering. That's it. Don't let these people stop the progress of what we're doing. Show that you're tough, show that you're capable, show that you've recovered, show America that you're strong, that you don't need to spend, in time recovering from this. I think it's a ridiculous double standard. But at the end of the day, if he had gotten up and gone golfing, maybe that's the way he deals with stress and everything coping afterward. You don't know. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And it was irrelevant to bring it up. Then people were saying, oh, he didn't call the wife of the man who died. Yes, he did. He did it on Tuesday. Well, he wouldn't have done it if we wouldn't have called him out for not calling her. First of all, you don't know that. Second of all, for all you know, despite the fact that he's probably not the one to care too much about protocol, he and his team may have held him to protocol, and it may have been, don't call this person until after the actual current president calls. If the current president is going to call someone, other people can call too, but governors may have to wait until after the president calls, or the protocol may be different if it's a state-related matter. But don't just presume that because it took a couple of days, maybe he's awful and was never going to call. And then people said, ooh, sir, you're taking a hit for not calling. But you don't know what's going on. The fact is that Trump looked strong, solid, focused, and more presidential getting up after being shot than he has ever looked, including while he was president. And he used that instant to inspire his base by raising a fist and shouting the word fight. And then somebody decided that they were going to AI Photoshop the picture of him surrounded by his Secret Service agents who were trying to get him off that stage. And they put smiles in all those people's faces in order to continue spreading misinformation. When it happened, I said, this may seal his reelection. I'm happy to say, I'm thrilled to say that the bump in polling information that I predicted hasn't happened yet, but it may take a bit longer. And we'll have to see how this plays out. And I may have been wrong about this actually likely sealing his reelection, but I still think that's likely to be the case. I've seen the math. I've seen the electoral college stuff. There's electoral college data, polling data that was done on Monday, I believe, that shows Biden still winning the electoral college, in addition to the popular vote. That doesn't tell us what's going to happen. And really all it means is this incident made it necessary for us to work even harder to ensure that he's not reelected. We're not engaging with or promoting any conspiracy theorist stuff here. Don't call in and do that. But what they, in quotes, are doing on every front is critical to address, and we must address it honestly. We need to be talking about the real effects and consequences of their goals. We need to be avoiding hyperbole and be careful with our words because we have the facts, we have the science, and we have the moral high ground. And that's what we need to be able to push back. Tonight, Josie's here, and we're going to talk about effective lobbying, effective activism, and how to avoid falling into the trap of they're evil and they want an evil world instead of what they're advocating will produce this kind of world and then holding their feet to the fire to address it. With Project 2025 and other things, we need to make sure more than ever that we are honest, accurate, and effective. We also are going to need to address JD Vance. And as I mentioned, I may do that next week in more detail. My understanding, based on talking with some people, is that he's a former atheist who's a relatively recent convert to Catholicism. Now, that's an interesting point because I have family members who said they wouldn't vote for Biden because he's Catholic. And now those family members should be held to the have their feet held to the fire that they can't vote for Trump because his running mate is Catholic. So if there's a Catholic on both sides and you can't vote for the Catholic, then you should just stay home and not vote or pick a third party you want to vote for. I mean, if they're going to try to argue for why they need to vote for Trump and they're saying it's because Biden's Catholic, well, now there's a Catholic on his ticket too. JD went from being a proud never Trumper who suggested that Trump might be America's Hitler to being the vice presidential running mate for that Hitler. We need to make people aware of everything that JD has ever said and how duplicitous and opportunistic he is. How someone can go from clearly demonstrating that they understand the real danger and consequences of Trump to then kneeling and kissing the ring so that they can be vice president. To go from a never Trumper to a Trump's right-hand man. We need to make people aware of everything he's ever said. His motivations, JD's, are definitely suspect. His motivations can and should be discussed. His motivations should be considered and they're relevant. But if you can't demonstrate what his motivations are, it's a mistake to claim to know what they are. And it's a mistake to pretend that you can read his mind. It's much better to focus on the real, undeniable harm to anyone with a womb, any LGBTQIA plus people, anyone who doesn't fit their Christian nationalist regime within Project 2025 and more. Now, I'll be putting out a video addressing the topic of motivations intent versus effectiveness for those who saw the recent Twitter argument. Clarity is coming on my channel, patreon.com/atheistdebates and youtube.com/@sansdeity. But tonight, it's about what do we do moving forward? So please welcome my guest, also one of the hosts of Transatlantic Call-In Show, Josie Caballero. What are your best recommendations for listeners who support progressive humanistic principles so that they can be most effective between now and the election?
Yes, and thank you for having me on tonight. It's always a pleasure to be
Thank you
here
for
with
being
all
here
of you.
on
Yeah,
short
and
notice.
and I know, yes, absolutely. I got the call and I'm like, you know what? I will come to this great show. So going back to your question, right now, I think the best thing we can do is exactly what you said, right? Which is get away from the conspiracy, get away from the looky type of ideas and everything, and focus on the harms and what the future will bring if if Trump is elected with JD Vance. It's very stark, it's very real. You can bring in
Yeah.
points from Project 2025 and really look at what the implications are. Yes, we all know that we are in for a hard fight, but in reality, we always were going to be in for a hard fight on this, regardless if it was Biden, regardless if the situation happened. And I think that I will go on the positive outlook of all of this. It's really woken people up to realize that we're not going to get this. Don't take this for granted. Like, this is going to be a hard fought win, and we are going to have to fight for that. So what does that mean? Well, that means talking to people and letting people know about what the consequences are. I know you were talking about your family and about the Catholicism thing,
Yeah.
but there are people who have issues about everything. If you talk to people, people care about things. It could be everything from the light at the stoplight is taking too long to change, to foreign relations of Ukraine needs to win the battle against Russia, right? Like, in everything in between, right? And fortunately and unfortunately, there is a playbook called Project 2025 that goes into every aspect of what is going to happen in this administration, from firing workers to putting in loyalists, to the fact that judges are going to be put in place that are going to be the youngest in American history. Like, that's already been stated that that's going to happen, meaning that 4 generations of our humanity will be affected by the next Supreme Court picks of whoever is the
Yep.
person that is picked. And really focusing on those things, right? Focus on the issues, focus on the things that matter. Because at the end of the day, people are going to go into that ballot box and they're going to make one decision. Am I going to be voting for or against Trump? I don't care about who is on the Democratic side. The question is, are you going to be voting for or against Trump? And that is the reality of the situation. And I think that has been the most persuasive. And that is good. That is coming from the heart, and that is coming from the reality of what the future is going to bring. So that's what I see will motivate people on this. But I also say this: don't spiral into despair. Okay, I will tell you right now, my own personal experience, just over the last few days after the shooting happened, I got into a little bit of a minor depression. I got really sleepy. I slept in that next day. I was really depressed. I watched movies. I didn't even get into the news. I think I kept my news consumption to like an hour and a half each day on the days afterward, because I didn't want to fall into the spiral, the vortex of the crap that was coming out without all the information being put out. So I had to shield myself from being able to see all of the vitriol that came online, just so I can have a clear-eyed picture and not spiral myself into despair and put myself into a position of like, oh, this is a done deal. Trump's going to win. That photo is going to do it all, and all of that. And I think it was the best mental health decision that I made, because when I came back to the fray of it all, a lot more information was out. Like you said, that bump didn't happen just yet. I don't know if it's going to happen. I am under the belief, and this is my opinion, that America is so normalized with gun violence and gun culture, mass shootings, school shootings, that it's just another shooting event. This isn't like it was when Reagan was shot at. This wasn't what it was when you had all of these incredible cases of political violence that happened. And I mean incredible as in the sheer scale of what it
Sure.
did to the political climate. And you know, we haven't seen a modern day political violence attempt like this since Gabby Giffords back in, I think,
Yep.
2011. And so there's so much in the air and there's so much speculation, and we don't know, right? And so that's what I'm thinking, is that America has been trained to have incredibly short memories, to the next shooting, to the next. And I think that is what's going to not give the lasting power that I think we would assume from like a Reagan shooting, right? And because the Reagan shooting made a huge difference. I mean, Reagan won in a landslide, right? After that incident.
Although
So I think
he likely would have still won.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. He would have likely still won, but they didn't. That shooting did no favors to the Democrats in that election. So that's what I think about it all. Is that we don't know. Everything's still up in the air. We still need another week to see what the bump is going to be. We also know that after conventions, there's always a bump too. So it's impossible to separate what the bump is actually from. Is it from the assassination attempt? Or is it just the standard, you know, post convention bump after a nomination, after wall to wall coverage of whatever message they're trying to say? So we don't know. And the best thing you can do is just listen to what is being said at these conventions. Like you said, JD Vance. JD Vance was a terrible pick for a campaign, but an amazing pick for an administration that is trying to take away our rights. Right? So there's a gamble there, right? The radicalness that JD Vance and the the cold, complicit, and effective way that he's going to be able to push a lot of these policies in place is incredibly scary, right? Mike Pence was just kind of there, right? Helped him bring in a state. He wasn't going to rock the boat too much, but JD Vance is ready to rock that boat as much as possible and take as much power from Trump as possible to do things himself, because we all know Trump is incompetent and lazy. But the fact that Trump picked somebody like JD Vance is also incredibly scary, because JD Vance is actually going to do the work that is going to foster in the fascist anti-democracy policies that we are all voting against this November.
Yeah, you mentioned kind of scaling back your news and social media intake for a little bit. I'm definitely going to be scaling back my social media interactions a little bit in certain areas, and one of them is um, I know myself, and I made a mistake when the shooting happened of making two posts very quickly. One of them was still waiting to hear about, I mean, this was just minutes after it happened, pretty much. One of them is I'm still waiting to hear what happened to Trump, but it appears that he's fine and that nobody else is hurt, and this may seal his thing. The other one was me poking at Alex Jones, and it was just a post where I tagged Alex Jones and said, "This is a false flag, right?" And I presumed when I made the post that everybody would see, I'm poking the absurdity of Alex, trying to call everything a false flag. And is he going to do that for this too? And then what ended up happening was immediately people on the left and right were calling it a false flag, an inside job, and this. So I removed that because obviously we can't joke. And then of course we found out that one retired individual had died while shielding his family from bullets.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I can appreciate taking a little bit more time, but also some of the discussions got completely sidetracked. The one I was talking about on Twitter, where it was, hey, don't fall into conspiracy theory stuff, and then it got co-opted and sent down a side discussion. The funny thing is, you talk about the shooting with Reagan. When Reagan was shot, basically John Hinckley Jr. Is the individual who did that, and he had basically become obsessed with Jodie Foster when she appeared in Taxi Driver, and he sent her love letters and poems and all this stuff, and he wanted some media fame, and so that was the reason for doing it. And it's wild that, like, I don't know when or if we'll know what this shooter's actual motivations were. There's a lot of confusing and misinformation. Yes, he was a registered Republican, but he's only 20, and so he got to vote in one election. And prior to that, he donated $15 to a Democratic thing.
Which may not be true either, right? Because the fact is, there's another individual in Pennsylvania that has the same name that was like 60 something, that could have been the individual that actually made that donation. So we don't actually know if that donation was made, because when you look at FEC filings, you actually have to go through the actual organization to figure out the address of where that is, because they don't put public addresses and demographic information outside of a name, money that was sent in, and that's it, right? So we have to know that that isn't actually it. And also about that donation as well, it came from the Progressive Turnout Project, which is notoriously scammy. It's one of those organizations that will send you a donation request, but they put it in the form of a bill. So sometimes people are just like, "Oh, I need to pay this. Fine, I'll pay it," and they don't even pay attention, and then that's how it is. It was an incredibly predatory way of raising money, but they were doing that as well. So it's not like the Progressive Turnout Project was this, beacon of progressive values that was going to change or shift anything in the actual political, climate. So that's also something to think about too. It was like pretty much a pack that didn't do very much at all.
Yeah, we're going to get to calls in just a minute. There's already two people on hold. By the way, as always, we'll take, prioritize theistic calls and people with supernatural beliefs and whatever else. But because we're talking politics, I'll just remind everybody, we're not going to be talking about or supporting any conspiracy theory stuff, and we're not going to be doing anything that in any way hints at an advocation for violence, or saying that what happened was in any way a good thing. Other than I think it's a good thing that Trump didn't die.
Yeah.
If for no other reason, no matter how much you might despise him, things would have been a whole lot worse. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean,
I think that we would
this
have
would have been
saw a red
Archduke
wave.
Ferdinand levels.
Yeah, we would have saw a red wave. Like,
Yeah.
that's when and so people who are like, "Oh, I wish," don't do that. Like, we don't want political violence. It messes up the equation of everything. There is no ability to control what happens. And so, we would see this rally around the flag effect around the entire Republican Party, right? And that is entirely more terrifying than just helping Trump at this point. So I am so grateful that he is alive. I am so grateful that we are moving on and that we are going to get back to the politics of not letting Trump back into office to vote against Trump.
So I have one more question for you before we get on. And my apologies if you did not see the clip. Have you seen the leaked video of Trump and RFK Jr. In their
Yes,
speakerphone discussion?
I
I
did.
found that there were people who are like, "Oh, this needs to be investigated. This is potential collusion." I'm not a lawyer. I don't know whether or not anything in the conversation cost the line. I know that Trump would say it was probably a perfect phone call, but in reality, what I got to see there that was most interesting to me, if it turns out there's something illegal collusion, cool, I'll reference that as well. But still, this showed you exactly how Trump operates, and it tells us two important things. Number one, there is no way in hell that Trump would have bothered to call RFK Jr. if the Trump team did not have internal polling data that suggested he was siphoning votes off. If he was only siphoning votes off from Biden, there's no way Trump's going to call him, which means they have some internal data that suggests that RFK Jr. is a problem. And then when you listen to what Trump said to him, it was the most obviously manipulative, patronizing, hey, we're going to win. We're way ahead. We wish you would serve. We got probably a good big place for it. It almost sounded like, hey,
That
I'm potentially,
that is the
yes,
line, right, of where
that's
the
close to
legality is.
line.
It's like,
But the
it's very
manipulation
close. You
part,
can't do that.
the manipulation part was that Trump jumped in on RFK Jr.'s anti-vax nonsense and started talking about when you give babies, 38 shots, it's like you're vaccinating a horse and not a 10 to 20 pound baby. So here you have one monumental idiot that doesn't understand vaccines talking to another monumental idiot that doesn't understand vaccines. And the first one, Trump, doesn't care about any of this, but is absolutely in a position where it looks like he's saying, you know what? You got your concerns about vax stuff. I got some concerns about vax. We talked about this years ago. Don't you remember? I think it'd be a really good idea if, and then he didn't say drop out and endorse me, but it's very clear. Hey, we got a place for you in the administration, and it might have something to do with anti-vax. It's this reading between the lines. Now, it's a mistake. I'm not sitting here asserting anybody's motivations or anything, and I don't know what was or wasn't legal about that. But holy crap, I listened to that and I was like, it's amazing watching someone thoroughly manipulate someone in the way that Trump is doing it.
Yeah, I actually listened to it 3 times throughout the day today, because I was just like, every time I saw it come up, I was like, "I gotta listen to this thing again." The perfect phone call, but, the idea is, in my opinion, obviously pandering, 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 going right to, like, the bailiwick of, JFK, which is like, I'm going to talk about the vaccines, and kind of like reducing JFK to vaccines, which isn't really that smart either. It's kind of dumb because JFK doesn't want to be reduced down to that one issue. He feels that he's more than just a anti-vax candidate. In fact, it's really frustrating for him to do that, which I think was the good part of that call. But you're right. Trump was using strategic wording to say, look, we agree, we agree, we agree. And the on the line, like the first time I heard it, the first thing I was like, when he said, "Oh, there's a place for you," I was like, "Oh wow, that's illegal." Like that's immediately like I've run, in my career and have been a part of over 70 campaigns in my life, like either running them, supporting them in some type of way. And every candidate is taught, if they're good, if they got good people around them, is taught never promise anybody a job before a campaign. That is, you just can't do that because the person can sue you if you lose, right? Like you can actually like it's a really 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 bad idea to say, oh, if I win, you're my chief of staff. Never put that in writing. Never say that. Like that is the worst thing you can do. Like it is really 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 bad. So the fact that he was doing that was kind of like, hey, drop out for me, right? And you can be a part of the cabinet. Don't you want to be a part of the cabinet? And that's what I heard without saying the words, right?
Yeah.
And so your instincts are right on that. And we'll see what happens, right? We'll see if RFK's rhetoric is going to change. But I do find it odd that that video was leaked. That's where I was like, if if RFK was taking that seriously, why would he leak it? Right? Because now it has a double bite effect of like, oh, if he does drop out and says it, everybody's gonna be like, oh yeah, because you're a loser and you did what Donald Trump said, and you're gonna go ahead and get that position. So it makes him look like a coward. It makes him look like, oh, I'm gonna take the easy route out. So it doesn't help him. And if he's
Yeah.
obstinate about it, then it's gonna make it look like Trump is going that RFK and Trump agree, which is going to siphon even more votes away from Trump because they were having a cordial, happy phone call. So if you don't like Trump, hey, at least Trump agrees with a lot of the things RFK does, so I'm going to go ahead and vote for RFK. So for me, that's what made it really weird to me. And it was his son that leaked it. So that to me is like a deeper story of like, what's the tea behind that? Right? Why would you leak it? That's the thing that makes me very
Yeah.
sussed out about the whole situation.
There are a number of things that are problematic. First of all, I would think, why would I don't stand there on speakerphone unless I'm intentionally wanting the people around me to hear it.
Yeah.
Um, and he's being filmed by a videographer. So he knew that was being filmed. And the footage we see is recorded after the fact. Like when the videographer, wow. When the videographer is editing the footage, because you can see the thing down there, he's playing this section. And somebody then takes their cell phone camera or some camera, probably cell phone, and records the playback on that screen, which is why it looks almost like you're looking at it through a window or
Yeah.
whatever else.
Yeah.
And it turns out that was
Mhm.
leaked. My understanding, I don't know for sure, but that was evidently leaked by RFK Jr.'s son. And so you're right.
Yeah,
What's the tea
that's
there?
what the news
Is
is.
the son trying to help the father? Is the son trying to sabotage the father? Does he understand that the brainworms and the anti-vax stuff and maybe there's some conflict there. I don't know what,
Yeah.
apart from clearly demonstrating Trump trying to massage RFK Jr. into compliance. We're not sure to what extent or, what other promises might have been made or anything else. But apart from showing that, I don't know how it does anything. This doesn't
Exactly.
help RFK Jr. It doesn't help Trump. And it doesn't
Yeah.
hurt Biden. It's a weird.
I think it helps if it stayed behind closed doors, right? Because this is standard political back channeling, talking conversations that happen all the time. Like, this is like standard run of the mill stuff, but it's supposed to be behind the closed door. So the fact that it's not behind the closed door and now under public scrutiny, it has so many knockdown effects that is going to actually hurt. So for me, I feel like, is RFK Jr.'s son not on team RFK, or is, and again, this is all at this point, this is Josie speculation, right? Is like, or like you said, right, JFK going to use this as a campaign message saying, look, Trump agrees with me. See, this is important. This is why my candidacy matters, that I have the presumptive, winner of this election agreeing with me. So therefore my policies actually matter. Vote for me because it's going to make a big difference. Right. So it's a weird one. I think that's one of the weirdest things that came out of this entire situation. But yeah, I think you're right to call it out and talk about it for a moment
It's
because
strange.
that's a head
I don't know
scratcher.
what conclusions
Yeah.
to reach, but it's strange. Somebody in chat pointed out that if you have
Yeah.
hearing aids, sometimes phones work better on speaker. So that could be why there's a speaker thing. I don't know. I don't have hearing aids. I probably will in short order. I'm going to go get my entire mouth replaced. How much longer have my ears got?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and the video, I mean, think about the fact if he's got a videographer, he's probably going to try to make money on a documentary after this campaign. It's a really good shot to have a conversation with if former president or the actual president at the time to be able to make that part of your preview of a documentary. So for me, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense that he would have that phone call and speaker because the videography is going to be like, oh yeah, this is a great scene for a documentary. Yeah, to show how important the person that we're profiling is. So yeah, that's another thing. So who knows? Like I said, it's a head scratcher. We're not going to know what is going to happen with that until more information comes out, which is how we should all approach news. Let's let it simmer for a little bit and then we figure out more over time. It's wild how that works.
Let me knock out a couple announcements, and then if you're ready, we can go to calls. My plan was to have this be about the subjects and occasional religious stuff, but of course, because you're here, the calls are already queuing up to make this just another version of
Yeah.
TACIS, if at all possible. So we're definitely going to be
Ready.
getting calls on the trans stuff. So we'll deal with that. But I don't have the full list of what's coming up on the line, but tomorrow you're on with Luxander at 2 p.m. Central for TACIS.
That's right.
That's my understanding. And then Sunday, the Sunday show at 2 p.m. is going to be Jimmy Snow and Eve. And the one after dark is going to be myself and Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels. I'll get the list of everything else that's going to be coming down the pipe soon. But let's go to calls. And we're going to start actually. Cindy's calling from New York and isn't ever available for a translating call-in show. And so has a question related to genitalia and gender. So Cindy, you're on with Josie.
Hi, Josie.
How are you?
Oh, it is so good to talk to you. Yes, I'm not able to call on Thursday, and so this is great that you're on tonight.
Yeah.
And I remember, and I'm sorry to bring up a bad memory with Matt for the Andrew Wilson bigot idiot. But when you guys are talking to bigots, and it's easy to tell that they're stupid, and I wanted to know if I am correct in believing if a cis man were to have a horrible accident and their genitals were mutilated, that does not make them in any way less of a man. Am I understanding this correctly? I'm not a man.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I would agree with that. And Matt, would you agree with that? I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it, Cindy.
So why don't you guys that are talking to these bigots, idiots, that I think laymen might understand it better that way? Because I keep hearing, I don't know if you know Jesse Lee Peterson and the people he talks to saying, all you have to do is cut off your penis and you think you're a woman. And I understand you're not cutting it off, you're doing surgery, inverted and so on and so forth. But if somebody like Andrew, who is not giving you any benefit of understanding, which I can't believe anybody is that stupid.
Yeah.
So why don't you put it in more layman's terms that more of the public might grasp what you're saying? Am I
So, Cindy, I
understanding that
have used
correct?
that argument. Oh, yes, absolutely. I have used that before. I think that there's a lot of different rhetorical tools that we can use in describing and helping people identify with the understanding of the fact that our genitalia isn't actually our gender. Right. It's like if you want to know if you want to know I'm a woman, the last place you look is my between my legs, right? You talk to me, you know me, you get my you talk, and I will let you know. And sometimes it's easier to kind of like figure out where people are, right? And I've had many arguments and many conversations, unfortunately, with people, and I have used that argument, and sometimes they'll go, well, then you're just a eunuch, and that's just the way it is. And talking and trying to help people understand about the understanding that your genitalia doesn't make you your gender. Even when you put it into those terms, it goes beyond the ability for the empathy. Sometimes it works, right? Sometimes it works, and it depends on how the argument turns out. Like, I've had many arguments with people who are like, it's the penis, it's the penis, it's the vagina, it's the vagina. And then you have that example, and then you make them think about it, right? And that
Right.
sometimes does work. So I think it is a tool.
Yes, yes. I don't
As
expect
far as
anybody, because they feel like they have to stand their ground. They're not going to admit to anything on the phone. But if after they get off the phone and they think about it a little longer and say, oh my goodness, if that's
yeah.
actually true, then I'm not understanding this at all.
Right. And Cindy, what I usually do, right, is I try to the priority thing that I try to do with someone who is trying to say that their genitals or their sex is their gender. I try to get people to understand that there's a difference between sex and gender. And because I think
That I've heard
that
a lot.
is the most. Yeah, right. That is the most important fundamental understanding to understanding a trans person and a trans person's lived reality, is to understand, okay, there is sex and then there is gender. Sometimes they're related, a lot of times they're related, but they can be independent of each other. And so, for example, like a trans person, right? I'm a trans woman. I was assigned male at birth, but I am a woman. That's what makes me trans, right? So even the sex that I was born with is the reason why I'm trans, because I know that, and trans people know this, that they were assigned a different sex at birth. So therefore their gender is in juxtaposition to that in a lot of ways. You're either trans, where it doesn't match the gender presentation of your sex, whatever, and then sometimes you're cis and you do have the gender and sex in society is the way that is. So for me, I try to get it outside of just the genital conversation and try to talk about gender. And usually what I try to say, and when I'm having these conversations, is like, some girls have penises, some don't. Some men have vaginas and some don't.
That's,
And so,
yeah, but that's
and
too
then
far. These people
what
can't
was that?
understand that. That's going
Yeah.
too far. The layman can't understand. A woman doesn't have a penis. That's
Yeah.
you're a mental case. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, which is why I start with those conversations in that way, to figure out where people are, right? And then you
Right.
start drilling into the different ways that people can communicate. Sometimes it is like the idea where they just fundamentally believe manhood comes from a penis, which is a very silly
Yeah.
thought. Like you said, it is a very silly thought. But sometimes that's the conversation you got to have with people and be like, hey, actually, though, that's not actually true. Right. And you have to use those examples in that way. But for me, the
Right.
most important piece, and if that works, great. But for me, the most important thing for people to walk away from is that your genitals don't make who you are. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And if we all just need to be able to live our lived reality and who we are, and move on with life. And if somebody doesn't want to believe that, well, too bad. I'm still going to be the woman I am. It's like too
And
bad. I'm
I
gonna be a
suppose
trans person. Trans people exist.
I suppose that's when you have people that you just have to try not to converse with because they'll never understand. They're not trying to and don't want to.
Yeah. And sometimes what it takes is for a family member to come out. That happened with a lot of members of my family where they weren't trans positive whatsoever. They didn't have any idea of what trans was and didn't think that they supported it. But as soon as a member of their family came out, then I had to have that conversation and they had to get confronted with, do you love me as a person or do you love me as this person that you thought I was, right? And sometimes that is the trigger that knocks an obstinate person who is stubborn in the belief to do that. And then sometimes you're like my biological father who will disown you. Right. So if my
Yeah,
biological father doesn't wanna accept me as a trans woman, there's nothing that will. Right. And so some people
right.
are at that point and you just gotta move on and live your life.
Exactly, and that could be
Yeah.
with anything. I've heard cases of people saying they're a different religion than what their parents are, and they're also gay. And the parents are more accepting of gayness rather than they are of changing the religion.
Absolutely. People are so strange and that's just how it goes. And and what I this is my father, my biological father, is a completely narcissistic human. And he believes
Mm.
that I should have been an image of him. And because I'm not that
Oh,
image of him, he doesn't ever
oh,
want
that
to have
hurts.
anything to do with me. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
But it's his loss, right? And it was really interesting because in my own upbringing, I think he was the one that knew I was a girl before anybody else because he was the most aggressive about the gender that I
Were
was.
you
And
firstborn?
out of it. What was that? Yes, I
Were you?
was. Yes, I was. Which
Ah,
mhm.
then that would fit
Yeah.
right up JLP's alley because real men make boys first.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, believe
Well,
me,
we've
there was
already
a there
seen
was a
Jordan
lot
Lee.
there.
We've already seen
Go
Jordan Lee
ahead, Matt.
Peterson. We've already seen Jordan Lee Peterson's browser search history for the porn he watches. So I don't know why anybody
Yeah,
pays any
Yeah.
attention to what he has to say about trans folks.
Yep, that's true. That's
but
true.
yeah, I only hate watch him. But the first time I've heard, well, no, I've heard the word eunuch in like movies
Yeah.
of old and such, and Game of Thrones and such as that. But it was
It's a
only
really
last
ancient
week.
term.
Yeah, but it was only last week. I think it was on Thursday that
Yes.
you guys had a
Yep,
caller. Okay, so it was
that's
you
right.
guys that I heard
It was
called
our
and
that's
said,
why exactly.
yeah,
He was
that
the one
called
that was like,
people
"Oh
a
yeah."
eunuch.
Yeah, and
And
it's such a dated ancient term.
yeah, I go, where did he come up with that?
Yeah, it's amazing how people just come up with these ideas that this is the way things are when the lived reality of the world is that trans women, trans men, and trans non-binary people exist in the world. And we are living, breathing human beings, and calling us something different isn't going to change the lived reality of who we are. And it's just a really
Oh,
myopic, sad state of affairs when somebody believes that way. But yeah, well, thank you,
thank
Cindy.
you.
I'm really glad you got to be able to chat with me. Since you
Yes,
can't
I'm
chat with
so
me on
pleased.
Thursday. Yeah, but no, thank you.
Matt, did you have any 2 cents?
No, I've got 73 cents, but now is not the time to be chipping it in.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much. I'm so glad I was able to talk to you.
Awesome.
Me
Thanks,
too.
Cindy.
Me too. Have a great day.
And as a reminder to everybody else, if you want to talk to Josie more about trans-related stuff, I suppose you could call in and do it here. Probably not the best idea. And probably better wait for the Transatlantic Call-In show tomorrow at 2. But if you're not able to make that, yes, we'll take calls on any number of things. Our next
Yeah,
caller
everybody
is
got a sneak peek.
Braxton's calling in from the UK. Pronouns are he, him. Braxton says Project 2025 is a cringe-inducing liberal end times prophecy. It's nothing to worry about. Braxton, I have two questions. One, why should I care what a theist in some other country thinks about Project 2025? And do you have some information that we don't?
All right, you don't care about UK?
Project 2025 is not a concern for the UK. I'm saying, why would I care what a theist in another country thinks about Project 2025? Do you have some information that I don't?
Matt, have you heard of NATO? Do you realize that America runs the world?
I'm sorry. Hang on. Let me mute you and we'll try this again. For those who aren't familiar, this is a call-in show that's run by me. And when I ask a question, I'd like for you to actually answer that question so that we can move on with the conversation. I don't need you to respond to that question with a separate question or two or three separate questions. I just need you to answer the question that I asked. So, what information do you have about Project 2025 that I don't?
That's what does that even mean?
What information do you have about Project 2025 that I don't? You do speak English in the UK, right?
So, Matt, you understand when someone asks you to rephrase something, you can't just repeat.
Okay. You didn't ask me to rephrase something. You asked me what it meant. And so I repeated it. And then I asked you if you spoke English there. You're asserting that Project 2025 is a cringe-inducing liberal end times prophecy. And I don't think that's true. And you're saying Project 2025 is nothing to worry about. I disagree. And so I'm asking you, what information do you have that informs your opinion that I don't have? That's the question. What about that question don't you understand?
Yeah, you can go actually on the Heritage Foundation's website and go see for yourself. It's nothing scary.
Yeah, I've read the entire document and I have all the information about it. And now I'm going to mute you since you won't answer the question that you're asked over and over again. I asked, what information did you have about Project 20? Hang on. I asked what information you had and you couldn't tell me or you wouldn't tell me. I'm trying to give you the benefit of the doubt here, Braxton, and take you seriously. But when you're calling in to say this is nothing to worry about, and I ask you why, what information do you have that makes you think it's nothing to worry about, and you don't answer it, I don't know what to do with that. So what makes it nothing to worry about?
You're making a positive claim. So you're the one who has to come up with the evidence. So I remain.
I'm sorry. Let me mute you again. You called in to my show and you told the screener it's cringe-inducing liberal end times prophecy. It is nothing to worry about. I'm going to ask you a question here. I'm going to take you off mute. Is that you making a positive claim?
No.
Goodbye, dumbass. That is absolutely you making a positive claim. I've hung up on him. If you call in to tell me this is nothing to worry about, that's a positive claim. If you call in to say it's cringe-inducing liberal end times prophecy, that's a positive claim. When I've given you multiple opportunities to present your reason or what information you have for why you think Project 2025 isn't relevant, and you keep coming back with your snarky bullshit attitude, I know who you are. I know what you're doing. Here's the truth. While Project 2025 doesn't itself do some of the things or make some of the assertions that some people claim it does, like it doesn't call for ending no-fault divorce, it doesn't call for a complete ban on abortion without exception, it doesn't call for a ban on contraceptives, it doesn't call for raising the retirement age or teaching Christian beliefs in public schools or ending marriage equality or banning Muslims from entering the country or abolishing the FDA or EPA. None of those things that people have said it does is what it actually does. But various Heritage Foundation experts and allied groups who signed onto the project have indeed called for those things at various points. Trump didn't have any necessary involvement in the construction of this. This was a Heritage Foundation in conjunction with a bunch of others in a think tank. And at the time in 2023, when they started to publish this, Trump didn't have the nomination, and the Heritage Foundation is a nonprofit, can't endorse a candidate, but they can talk about policies. That's another conspiracy theory that I saw people passing around this week saying, ooh, if you go take the document and forward it to the the IRS with a 990 or whatever, that'll get them. No, it won't get them shut down. They have nonprofits can talk policy all fucking day long, and stop being stupid about that. There is every reason to believe that a second term Trump would go hog wild with the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025, especially with a focus on centralizing executive authority. Now, given the extra bonus boost from the Supreme Court that gives the executive branch even more power. So there's a hardline religious right agenda that's a part of Project 2025. They are not the most right-leaning, and they are not even the most Christian nationalist thing you're likely to see. And yet what it absolutely is this is designed to appeal to the part of the base that Trump doesn't normally appeal to. And that is those people with Christian nationalist mindset. Revoking FDA approval of the abortion pill, mifepristone, which is used in about half of U.S. abortions, that's in there. Using an old law known as the Comstock Act to prosecute people who send abortion pills through the mail, that's in there. Ending the mandate for insurance to cover the week after contraceptive pill, yep. Crackdown on abortion tourism in liberal states by requiring states to report where women seek abortions. So they're not leaving it to the states. They've gone from trying to put up trap laws to make it effectively illegal to outlawing it at the Supreme Court level and doing everything they can to disrupt it at the state level, because ending abortion is their goal, even if that's not what they say. And they're going to want to end subsidies for stem cell and fetal research. Trump in April of 2022 praised the Heritage Foundation, calling it a great group that would lay the groundwork and detail plans for exactly what our movement will do. That is a quote. Great group, lay the groundwork and detail plans for exactly what our movement will do. That was April of 2022. And this is what we will do. And the rest of the quote is, when the American people give us a colossal mandate to save America. Now, that completely conflicts with his recent claim from a week or two ago that he doesn't know who's behind the Heritage Foundation, which is weird because 2/3 of the authors and editors involved in Project 2025 served in the Trump administration. Ben Carson, Chris Miller, Russ Voigt, Ken Cuccinelli, John McEntee, all of these are individuals who were previously part of a Trump administration and are likely to be that again. And what we know from Project 2025 and the Heritage Foundation is that they have started creating a database of known ideological, what's the right term? Loyalists, people who support this ideology, so that this may not happen, but it's not impossible. And I'd love for somebody to call in and tell me what anyone could do to stop it. For Trump to walk in on day one and fire 50,000 federal employees and replace them with Heritage Foundation loyalists. I'm not a lawyer. I don't think anything could possibly be done. Even before the Supreme Court gave him the power to not be prosecuted for crimes, what do you do to stop the new president from putting loyalists everywhere? And then how much difference does it make what the law is in this state if all of the loyalists are the ones that are responsible for enforcing the law and protecting the law? There are small towns in the United States. Sorry for this diversion. Maybe this is a clip. There are small towns in the United States, like Curious Joel, which are completely run by religious zealots. Seth Andrews and I were going to do a documentary going to these towns and engaging with them. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, and I don't think it's going to. But there are a number of towns where extreme forms of Judaism are what are running the town, where men have to walk on one side of the street and women have to walk on the other side of the street. Where if you're an outsider and you want to move to town, yeah, they're not going to stop you. They're not going to violate your rights, but how long do you think it's going to take to get your electricity turned on, get your water turned on? What kind of job you think you're going to get in that area? It's very easy to create pockets of civilization that are effectively run by religious zealots. We've seen a number of those. How much more difficult do you think it's going to be to have a presidential cabinet that's been elected by half the population, who all think that Project 2025 is, or some elements of it, are good goals? How much more difficult is it going to be for them to set up the effective elimination of our rights, the effective elimination of, oh, we didn't outlaw gay marriage. We're just not going to offer marriage certificates to anybody who does it. And there's nothing you can do about it because it's against our religion. And we hired everybody where it's against our religion. We're also not going to fill your contraception stuff. And we're not going to force pharmacists to do it. This stuff is already happening in small doses. They've been test marketing this stuff for decades all around. We've talked about the lawsuits and the problems over and over and over again. Now, I don't think for a second that Braxton, the web caller from the UK, who doesn't think that he's making a positive claim when he says this is, I forget what all he said it was, but
Nothing
he's
to
wrong.
worry about.
Nothing to worry about. It's a liberal fantasy. So Braxton's either not honest or not bright enough to actually be able to defend the thing he says. But also, this is why I started with, why should I care what a God-believing theist, well, that's redundant. Why should I care what a theist in the UK thinks about Project 2025? Project 2025 isn't there for the UK. Oh, wait, are you unfamiliar with NATO? Do you not realize, the power that these nations have? Yes, I do. And that's why all of you should be just as worried about this. And instead of saying it's no big deal, you should be siding with the people who are saying, yes, this is potentially a big deal. And by the way, I don't think all of Project 2025 would ever be implemented because they're not a hive mind. The think tank that put this together is putting certain things up. It's a little bit like when somebody says, I'm going to submit a flag burning amendment in the House on Friday so that we can ban flag burning forever. I'm going to introduce that amendment. And then they introduce it and it goes nowhere because it will always go nowhere. And they knew it was going to go nowhere before they did it. That's them pandering to their base, saying, I keep trying to get this implemented, so you need to keep electing me, and I will constantly keep pushing for this, as if there's a fucking epidemic of flag burning. You know when there will be an epidemic of flag burning? The second they outlaw it. I got a box of flags, no shit, downstairs that will be burnt the second somebody tries to outlaw flag burning.
I will say this though, what's different and unique about like a flag burning bill versus the criminalization via the executive branch is the fact that you could put in the justice system people who will prosecute that, right? And you can, regardless of what the law says, because of the fact that they're going to be basically controlling all of that. And that's what's the scary part about it, is the level of power that we are giving the executive branch that really breaks the balance of powers that we're supposed to have with three branches of government. And maybe I'm even more doomer on this than you are, Matt, which is surprising on this point, is the fact that the Project 2025 is a roadmap on how to run the administrative body. So the 16 officials that have authored it, that were part of the administration, it's those people who are going to use Project 2025 as the way to do business and do things. Like there are things such as, criminalizing pornography, but also criminalizing open displays of gay and trans people in public. So therefore, basically criminalizing people for being trans and gay. There is things in the veteran administration that they have where if you do not file a disability claim within 10 years of getting out of service, sorry, we're not going to cover you anymore. Basically eliminating things such as the PAC Act, where they were able to retroactively give benefits to veterans. Pretty much also eliminating any type of veteran accessibility. So, for example, if you do not get more than 10% disability claims, which is basically any claim at all, and you come out of the military, quote unquote, 100% healthy, then you won't even have access to VA hospital services at all, right? Like those are this is a 900-page document, right? Like there are so many little things that people don't even realize, such as making it required for students to take the ASVAB, which is the military readiness exam, right? That is something that they want to do for public school students, making it much easier for the military to indoctrinate and pull people into service. So there is so much. And so the idea that we're just going to sit here and be like, oh, it's not a big deal, and us having to like describe all of these points to make it so is just, it's just complete
The
BS.
show,
This is one of the biggest threats.
if Project 2025, if some elements come to fruition, we would have to stop doing the transatlantic call-in show because they would count it as pornography merely because we're discussing gender. And I shouldn't say we. I'm not on TACIS, and I'm not going to be on TACIS. Don't worry. But it's that thing.
I will.
We've got a call
Be
here.
gay, do crime.
Be gay, do crime. We have Joe calling, an atheist from Texas, whose pronoun is me, I guess. Hey, Joe, you're on with Josie and Matt.
All right, thanks a lot.
Me isn't a pronoun.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do I refer to you in first person only? So it's like,
Yeah,
was that what that means?
You can refer to me however you'd like to refer to me.
Okay, you can
Don't
say
get-
any or all pronouns.
That is exactly correct.
Any or all is the way you would do that in a way that is more effective than me. Because when you say me, it almost sounds like you may be trolling it. So if you really say any all, like, and that's what you truly believe, then that's completely acceptable. So there we go. We fixed it on the screen for you.
Yeah,
Right.
no worries. So it says here, you say religion may not be mental illness, but Christian nationalists are continuing to take advantage, or continuing the age-old practice of taking advantage of the mentally fragile and weak-minded. What counts as weak-minded?
Anyone who may have a mental illness, I'm not a doctor or whatever, but I can actually tell you that a person, not everyone is, not everybody is not susceptible to mental illness. So anyone who may be mental illness or have a mental illness, I'm sorry, but they fall into it. You know what I'm saying?
First of all, I need to be corrected. Me is in fact a pronoun.
Yes.
That
It's
is
just not the expected personage of the pronoun.
That is great.
Sure. So
For-
my correction,
for yourself.
me is absolutely a pronoun, but it's not the correct personage of what we would use, like he, she, they, etc. Anyway, so I was a fundamentalist Christian for the first 30 or so years of my life. Hey, Scott, if you want to say I'm wrong about destiny, call in and defend it, but stop saying it in chat. It's not going to happen. So for about the first 30 years of my life or so, I was a fundamentalist Christian. Was I weak-minded? Was I mentally ill?
No, actually, it turned out that you weren't. Because see, I myself went through the whole Christianity, being saved by Jesus and all of that myself. But I soon realized how much of a scam it really was and what was really happening. So
I'm confused.
you were not mentally ill. But those people, I have known people, I've actually been very close and had family members who did have mental illness. And I could say without a doubt that the weak-minded, the people that do not discern reality from fiction, absolutely will 100% be more susceptible to falling into a religious type of thinking. And I did it myself. I was
So what?
actually going through a very, very hard time.
Aren't those same
Right.
people more likely to fall into any number of different things that aren't potentially true? Why are you focused on
They
whether or
could.
not religion is doing this when anybody could take advantage of it? I have real problems when people are like, well, it may not be mental illness, but it preys on the mentally weak. Yes, lots of things prey on people who are in a state of weakness, but I don't tend to assess that as weak-minded. You're going to be fragile, confused, misguided, whatever. Why are you bringing this up at all?
Well, I agree with you, but I think that the entire Christian nationalism movement is continuing the same. In my opinion, I believe that the Republican Party at this moment, and Donald Trump and everyone having to do with the Republican Party at this moment, they are feeding off of people who don't really discern reality from non-reality. So they tell them things because they know that they'll fall for it. Okay, there's money.
So
money in it.
Joe, are you suggesting that religious leaders are all con artists that are seeking out these people, and that there aren't sincere believers trying to help people?
Well, I actually believe that from the beginning of, we could go back before the New Testament to the Old Testament, that they actually did. I think that they did think about that. I think that they did think.
Joe, why are you going back into antiquity? There's 50 churches within 100 miles of me for sure. Are none of the leaders of those churches honest believers that are seeking to help people based on what they honestly believe?
Well, they may, but
you're the one that's talking about it in terms of them intentionally seeking out and exploiting the weak-minded, and it's making you sound weak-minded. Are there honest believers out there who are sincere and are just advocating what they honestly believe to be true and trying to actually help people? I know some personally. And it's not a may. Right. If you don't know any, go out and meet them and engage with them. It's not a may. It is absolutely the case. When I was a believer, I was fucking sincere about it. I wasn't a con artist looking for weak-minded people to exploit. Please stop with the conspiracy theorist nonsense.
Well, I do understand, because I went through it as well. But maybe it was just because where I went and the experience that I had, that I ended up with that belief. But
Joe, I have a question. I have a question for you, Joe. Hold on one second. So for me, it's like, what's the value of looking at your fellow people that are living in the world as mentally fragile and weak-minded? Yes, we do know that cults exist. People get susceptible. Desperate people are at different points in their lives. But, I used to be a Republican and joined the military as a young person. I would not consider myself fragile and weak-minded to do that. You do realize that you're creating a bucket, right? That you're saying all these people are weak-minded and fragile. You're not. I don't see that as a value. So what is the value of you thinking that mentally fragile and weak-minded people are the target of Christian nationalism, rather than sincere people that actually believe that Christian nationalism is the way, and they're actually advocating for it because they actually want to help people? I mean, I think that's the issue, is like, you think that this is just targeting weak-minded and fragile people. I don't see the persuasive value in that. Sorry, answer the question. Why do you think there's value in thinking like that?
Okay, well, what I believe is that not every single person may be mentally weak, or have a weak mind, or may be susceptible to it, but on the other side, people don't think about who is weak-minded or what. They just put it out there and they get followers from that. I believe, since I've been there, I've seen it. I had an epiphany about the entire thing, that it's definitely not something that is realistic. Okay? So whenever I see a religious leader that's talking about their religion and bringing people in, okay, that's fine. But I think that they're doing it solely. They may be doing it because they want to help people, because I can see that,
Listen to yourself,
people can
Joe.
be helped.
Listen to yourself.
Mhm.
Listen to yourself. You have alternated between they are intentionally seeking out weak-minded individuals to exploit them, implying that religion is essentially a racket that seeks to exploit. Then you went and said that that's not the case. And now, in the span of one sentence, while talking about what they're going to do, because there's pushback, you went from, well, they might be, they might not be. What is your point, sir?
My point is that it's all a bunch of shit. I'm sorry about the language.
I don't care about the fucking language. How do you know it's shit?
Because I've been there.
Cool.
Christian nationalism.
And if somebody tells me it's not
to,
shit, and if somebody tells me that it's not shit, and I ask them how they know, and they say, because I've been there, should that be enough to convince anybody of anything?
Well, no. And I'm
No.
not really here to convince anyone. I'm just here to...
Then why did you call?
Say,
did you just need a hug, Joe?
Did
you just want somebody to tell you that, yes, you've sussed out religion isn't real, and that it's okay to mock people who might have fallen for it as weak-minded?
No, I actually agree with the title of the video today, Christian Nationalism versus Humanism. Okay? There's a big difference between...
How can you agree? How can you agree with the title of a video when it doesn't make any sort of statement?
And honestly, like it's not humanistic. It's not humanistic. It's not humanistic to think that your fellow people that you exist in the world with are all weak-minded, fragile beings that you need to like win over somehow. Like it's just not I don't think it's like what the spirit of what the title is. It's just like Christian nationalists believe this, humanist people think this, and we are going to have a conversation, and people will gravitate to what is the most logical case for their understanding. It's not because they're weak. It's not because they're weak-minded. It's just that they may not have seen a logical argument that may give them that epiphany that you had, Joe. Like I just want you to think about the epiphany that you had, that you were like, oh wait, maybe everything that I was told at a younger age or whatever isn't actually grounded in reality. So I'm going to do my own self-reflection and find out what I care about as reality in the world is not a weak-minded thing.
Let's see if we can save this, Joe. I'm gonna ask a couple questions, and let's see if we can't get this back on track, end everything on good terms, and go on to another call. You and I agree that religion hasn't met its burden of proof. No religion that either of us are aware of have met its burden of proof that it's true and correct, right?
That is absolutely correct. Yes.
Cool. We also agree that there are people who sincerely believe a variety of religions, irrespective of whether or not they have good reason. They sincerely believe, right?
That is correct.
And we also believe that some of these people who sincerely believe are advocates of spreading and sharing that belief because they think it benefits people, right?
That is correct as well. Mm-hmm.
And other people can fall into unwarranted, unjustified beliefs, either through a gap in rationality or reason, which doesn't necessarily mean that they're weak-minded. They may just be ill-informed or misinformed or never given the tools about how to think critical. Others might be in an emotional state, which, yes, religions occasionally have been known to exploit people in weakened states in order to say, hey, we can help you. And the way that religions go about it may, in fact, be dishonest on a number of occasions, where we're going to give you, love bomb you, give you the sense of community, give you all these other things that make it seem as if the supernatural claims we're making have merit. But in reality, it's just people interacting. Are we in agreement there?
That is correct as well. Mhm.
I think we'd also agree, maybe not specifically about who. Like, for example, I think J.D. Vance is a fraud and not an actual convinced, committed Catholic based on just little pieces of stuff. It could be completely wrong, not claiming to read his mind. I'm just saying what I'm convinced of. On the other hand, I've met and spoken to Ray Comfort. I think that Ray is a sincere believer who's committed to his belief. But at a minimum, you and I could both agree that there are probably con artists and hucksters out there advocating for a religion they don't actually believe and doing it because it's useful to them, right?
That is absolutely correct. Yes.
The people who fall prey to those con men and hucksters, are they stupid? Are they weak-minded? Or could that happen to anybody under the right circumstances?
Yeah, I could say that maybe they're not weak-minded, because I too did fall into that thinking at one time, and I didn't think of myself as weak-minded. I was just in a weakened mental state at that time. So I
Sure.
do understand that. Whenever I
And
say
people in that state,
weak-minded, I mean that they may be fragile in their mental state. That's what
people in that state, is it better to address them with empathy and understanding that this could happen to anybody, or to refer to them as weak-minded?
Absolutely the former, yes.
Yeah. So, Joe, we're in complete agreement. There are, in fact, people out there who are weak-minded, gullible. There are also people who believe things for bad reasons, and they could be brilliant, and they could be reasonably well-informed, but just missed something. Not everybody has spent as much time studying this. Not everybody has spent as much time invested in it. And so, while I agree with you, is the statement, some religious leaders exploit mental illness? Yes. Some religious leaders exploit weak-minded individuals? Yes. Some religious leaders exploit mentally impaired, like frustration, depression, things like this. Yes, all of the things. Does this represent what religion is in a normative sense? No. The overwhelming majority of people are probably decent people, sincere believers, just going with what they've been taught and what they think is good and real for the world. And as long as we can agree to that, then cool. Thanks, Joe. I largely agree. Let's do what we can to end the exploitation and be supportive of secular humanism.
Yes,
All right,
and Joe,
thanks a lot, man.
you'll find yourself much more successful talking to people in that empathy state than you were when you started this call. So just always think of people like they're just humans, right? They're all going through crap, just like you were going through whatever you were going through at your time. So you're going to be much more successful in getting your point across if you just see people that way.
All right. Well, thank you,
Thank
Josie.
you, Joe.
Cool. Thanks, Joe.
Mhm.
See you later. We have some open lines right now. As a matter of fact, so if you're a theist of some stripe or another and want to call in, what we're specifically looking for when we're doing theistic calls is someone who's ready to say, I'm convinced of this particular claim, and I'm convinced for this reason. And in particular, I think this reason should be sufficient to convince anybody. Because if you have this view, like, I believe there's a God, but it's only because of private revelation and I can't demonstrate it to anybody, cool. I'm sorry that that's the case, because I got nothing I can do with a call like that. For somebody to call in and say, hey, I believe in God, but it's because God talks to me and he won't talk to you, that type of thing, we're kind of stuck. So what we're looking for in particular is somebody to say, okay, I have this belief and here's why. And here's why I think anybody should believe it. Because Josie and I could do that, hopefully. I'm not saying we could absolutely do it and do it well, but we could do that for virtually anything we believe. I would hope.
That's right.
There's definitely something I believe that I can't defend, and there's definitely something Josie believes that she can't defend. But generally speaking, anything that we're willing to publicly profess of, here's the thing, we could be wrong, but we at least have something in our head that goes, here's why I'm convinced, and here's why other people should be convinced. I did this with regard to conspiracy theory claims this past week, because there's so many people like, Trump's a liar, so everything he says is a lie. And since the news report said it was glass and Trump's the only one that said it was a bullet, maybe it wasn't a bullet. No, Trump's not the only one that says the bullet, but also it wasn't glass from the teleprompter because the teleprompters weren't fucking shot. And I mean, that we at least know. But making use of Occam's razor, I can make a case for, here's this piece of data, boom, 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 boom. And the most reasonable assessment is that what appears to have happened, an attempted assassination, is exactly what did happen, because the number of people that would have to be involved in a conspiracy. And by the way, the Secret Service does not work for Trump. Secret Service works for the federal government. They are assigned to Trump, his protective detail. But that doesn't mean they're Republicans. That doesn't mean they're Trump loyalists. They might be. That doesn't mean that they have any incentive or motivation to participate in some kind of fraudulent thing. Whenever you start going down the conspiracy theorist route, you've got to think, how many people had to be involved, and how many people have to stay quiet, and how many people have to make sure that nobody else talks about this. That's a big thing. All right.
Yeah.
Here we go. Calling from China. It's kooky. Pronouns are he, him. I don't know why there's music playing. Kooky, you just played Happy Birthday. Are you the same one that played Happy Birthday when I hung up on you just the other day?
I banned him.
Yeah, you are. That's unfortunate.
Okay. Are they gone?
Yeah, they are.
Okay. All right. Fine.
Let's take Kookie's question, because right now, first of all, we have completely open lines. So if you're out there and you specifically were trying to avoid it to make sure we got theistic calls or whatever else, if you have questions for myself or Josie on virtually anything, although I'd rather save the trans calls for TACIS tomorrow, but I'm not opposed to it. But if you have those questions, get them in. I don't know what happened to the little coward in chat that tried to say I was wrong about Destiny. Destiny was throwing around the R slur. Destiny was throwing around the R slur on Twitter and mocking the individual who was killed at the rally, and wound up getting banned from like Kick or something. And I made the comment that nobody should be paying any attention to what Destiny says at this point.
Yeah, he wrote me, in his little manifesto that he did once that had the trans question, he actually named me 10 times. Me 10 times in a manifesto. Yeah. So I really got under his skin.
I haven't written a manifesto yet, but I don't think that you're going to be in my manifesto 10 times. Okay. You might be in it a couple of times, but probably not 10 times. So while we're waiting for other potential callers to call in, let's address that individual's question, because it's basically about hate speech. This is something I'm genuinely curious about, because Josie's take and my take might be different. But the question was essentially, is it hate speech to burn an LGBTQ flag? And if it is, why isn't it also hate speech to burn the national flag, the flag of the United States? You want it?
Sure. Yeah. So there is a completely different type of thing. So when there's a nation flag that represents like the nation, the state, the people within it. And then there are community flags, right? And the LGBTQ flag, the progressive flag, this one right here, this is a very common one, it's progressive flag. Burning that flag is making a statement against a community of people, right? And so therefore burning that is basically saying I am completely against and I want to destroy the unity and everything that that flag represents for our community. So if you think about the LGBTQ flag, it means that we can live freely in the United States. We can love who we want. We can be trans. We can have, like, you know, like asexuality. There is so much to it. Queerness, bi, lesbian, and all of that is about freedom to be able to be who we are and live in society. A lot of times when we see the queer flag for people who are part of the community, we'll see that flag as a symbol of safety. So if somebody's hanging the flag up in a storefront, that place is probably gonna serve you, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, this is really, really important. So when you burn that flag, you are basically saying that I do not believe in your safety, I don't believe in your freedom, and I want to basically destroy the symbolism of what that flag means. So when it comes to a national flag, there is much more to it when it goes out. When you burn a national flag, that is more of a statement. It could be a statement toward policy. It could be a statement to disagreement of the state doing particular actions. It could just be your freedom to be able to say, look, my country is able to allow me to do this, which is why I love it. It could be like, I hate what's going on, which isn't going toward a particular community that is already marginalized and at risk. So that is the big difference, because people are burning a queer flag out of malice because they do not believe in the fact that we should exist and have safe spaces. And there's a lot of evidence to prove that. Matt, what is your take on that?
So I've said before, I'm opposed in principle to many concepts tied to hate speech. I think that the actual crime that might take place that is harmful and already illegal, we tend to use hate speech stuff as a way of boosting the penalty for that. And I think that can already happen with judges. They can consider what you said and why you said it and how likely it is to cause other problems, et cetera. So just de facto, this is hate speech and is therefore illegal. I'm opposed to. I think you get to be as hateful and shitty as you want in your free speech exercise. The consequences come not from the law, but from people not including you. You don't get invited to the parties, etc. However, there are things about hate speech that I absolutely support and felt were necessary. It's very, very narrow. And generally,
It's
if somebody in Iran stands up and burns the American flag in protest, first of all, they're not subject to our laws to begin with. Haha. So what difference does it make if we said it was hate speech? Second of all, I would not feel like any individual or group, especially in any protected class, had been in any way victimized by that. They're not going after someone for race, religion, sexual orientation, gender. They're not going after any of that. They're just talking about this is emblematic of the nation that I'm currently protesting. If I burn a United States flag, how is it hate speech? I'm part of the thing that I'm objecting to. It's very much like there are words that I don't get to use and would not use that people in protected classes do get to use. F slurs, T slurs, all these things that people maybe in fun, it's not hate speech if they're going at each other and, and saying this stuff. That's not hate speech for them. It might be for me. And so I think there's the context is important there and finding out what it is. Now, so somebody said, the question was, one, is it hate speech to burn a trans or a gay pride flag or trans pride flag? And the answer for me is, it depends.
It depends.
I mean,
I agree.
Arden could go burn one in the front yard and it's not hate speech.
like the thing is, it's like I think it's a hateful act in a lot of context, but like the speech itself, it's very narrow. Like Matt said, like if you're going to, say do that and then say I think all queer people should, no longer exist, and like that is like now you're putting words to the action and you're using the flag as a symbol of the entire community, and it becomes a hateful act. And so I do believe that when you say burning a pride flag is not like an act of hate speech that is so egregious that somebody's going to go to jail if you do it. We see it on social media all the time. It happens all the time. People cut up the pride flag. People cut out the trans colors of the progress flag. It's about the intent of what that means. Somebody, spraying a swastika onto a church, Jewish synagogue, for example, that's a pretty hateful act and it's hate speech, right? Like there's a direct connotation of what you're trying to say with that symbology, right?
Yeah.
So
And
again,
also
I
there's the
think it's
issue.
narrow and it's about law enforcement. Go ahead, Matt.
And also the issue is what you or I or anybody else may consider hate speech may be slightly different than what is considered hate speech under different pieces of legislation. I'm talking about idealistically. People would used to look at me and say, "Oh, Matt said free speech absolutist." No, I'm not. I'm a free speech essentialist. And generally speaking, I'm fine with permitting any speech until there's a demonstration that the speech itself is problematic, like the yelling of fire in a theater when there's no fire and you might, or speech that incites a riot, or standing up and encouraging an insurrection and a violent attempt to overthrow a government. I don't know that that's hate speech, but it's speech with consequences. And so figuring out where it goes. So the person was asking, why is it hate speech to do this, but not that? I think we kind of addressed that. It may not be hate speech for either.
It's not hate speech for either, right? And I think that is I got caught into the question in a sense where it was like, oh, is this hate speech? It's like, it's not. It's a protected amendment. You can burn a flag. It's like it's something that we allow as our freedom. And and if somebody was being prosecuted for like burning a pride flag on their property, I'm pretty sure the ACLU would say, yeah, that's okay. You can actually do that. It's fine,
Yeah.
right? Like just like Nazis can actually protest and do a march down the streets, and you still, like, if they go to the proper permitting process and all of that, yeah, that's America.
Have your
We
white
see it all the
supremacist
time.
club. And I've said
Yeah.
this before. We're gonna go. We got some callers lined up, and we're gonna go to caller in just a second. I said before, I want the racists and the bigots and the white supremacists and the white nationalists. I want them all just comfortable enough to tell us who they are, and just uncomfortable enough that they're not really able to do anything with what they say. I want to know which cops are fucking racist, because when you make it so that they can't express that, you don't get rid of racist cops, you get rid of any way of addressing the problem with racist cops. And by the way, sorry to pick on cops. I'm not an all cops are bastards dude. A good chunk of you fuckers are, but not all of you, and maybe not even most. But it's about implementing our rights and then recognizing when our freedoms cause problems and how to deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It 100%. Go ahead.
We've got Noah Bronzahim calling from Pennsylvania, a former MAGA guy wanting to offer a misuse of phobia and transphobia. What's up, Noah?
Yeah, go for it.
Hello?
Oh, my bad. He was
Noah,
muted on my
are you
end
there?
because of that glass guy. You are now
Oh,
on,
apologize.
caller. Sorry, my apologies.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Josie.
Hello, Noah.
Hey, Noah.
Hey.
Hey, yeah, you guys have all played a huge part in my life. I went from being a pretty, well, I don't want to say devout, but strict Christian, MAGA guy, big time Trump guy. I used to be extremely transphobic. Transatlantic call-in show has been something that has really been eye-opening for me, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. So when I was a MAGA guy and deep into the transphobic rhetoric, whenever somebody would tell me that I'm being transphobic, it would immediately send me into like almost a rage because I didn't view it as a fear, right? Like it was problematic rhetoric, but I wouldn't have translated it as a fear. You know, big tough guy. I'm not afraid of insert ridiculous remark here. So I was wondering if we, instead of using the word transphobia, if we use a different word when addressing people with transphobic rhetoric, if that might help keep the the blood pressure lower.
So, are you familiar with the term hydrophobia?
Yeah, actually, I had to get rabies shots last November, so yeah, I'm a little familiar with it.
Does it mean if something is hydrophobic that it's afraid of water?
No, I wouldn't say so.
What it does mean is that it's averse to water.
Right, like that powder, if you put it in water, where like you take it out and it's not wet because the water molecules won't stick to it.
Yeah,
Correct.
and so that means that the suffix phobia, which colloquially gets used as fear of on occasion, doesn't necessarily mean fear of. It's also used in a number of contexts as aversion to or opposition to. Isn't that accurate for what we're calling transphobia?
Like a repel.
Yeah, I would say it's extremely accurate.
So why would we choose a different word if we have an accurate one instead of just teaching people the accuracy?
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I would say that's what we should do.
And I want to
Okay,
add.
I'll shut up now. Go ahead, Josie.
Yeah, I'll add.
I'll take the
to this.
win and
No,
back
thank
off.
you, Noah. Yeah. So Noah, what you're speaking to is something that I actually work in national trans advocacy. And one of the things that we have to work on sometimes is messaging, right? I
sorry,
work
I didn't catch that. I didn't catch all of what I didn't catch all of what she said.
Okay. Yeah. So sorry, I'll repeat myself. So I work professionally in national trans advocacy, and some of the conversations that we have is about messaging, right? Because sometimes the way people use words is exactly what you said. It's like somebody calls somebody transphobic and they're like, oh my gosh, you used the word and I'm now going to shut down the way that I'm hearing you because of that. And that happens. And I know that you're in a perfect position as someone who was a former MAGA to be able to explain that phobia is not just to be afraid of, but it's also to be repelled or be discussed or to do all that type of stuff is included. Now, what you'll see from a lot of orgs, we don't even use the word transphobic. What we use is anti-trans, right? Like we go, this anti-trans legislation, that these people are anti-trans. They're radical because they want to be against trans rights. We use those words to be more clear because there is a colloquial sense of like arachnophobia is like the fear of spiders, and people will think about that and don't want to open up a dictionary and realize that phobia has more than one meaning. And it's really frustrating, and sometimes we have to shift our advocacy to be able to do that. So we train our advocates, the people who do a lot of the work on the ground that are talking to people in the public, to try to stay away from the word transphobic, because people already have that connotation that you're talking about, and just say anti-trans, right? Because then it's more clear, regardless outside of the phobia and the things like that. So we do understand that phobia is completely misunderstood in culture, but Matt is absolutely right. We should be working to making a more educated population to understand what the roots of phobia comes from and why it came out to be the way that it was.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I wasn't thinking about the word phobia or phobic, that the suffix or whatever having different definitions. I just immediately thought phobia equals fear, right? That's where my mistake was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's
Mm-hmm.
common.
Absolutely.
And it could be, as somebody pointed out in chat, it may be the case that because the general presumption is that it means fear, that this is such a common kind of knockback point of, well, I'm not afraid. Well, I'm not afraid. Well, I'm not afraid. And then you have to explain it. So I'm an advocate for saying, hey, we can teach them this aspect of the suffix. This is why I immediately can go right to something being hydrophobic. But somebody in chat pointed out that maybe it's too big of a stumbling block. I don't know. I'm happy to change the term that I use if the data suggests that something else is better. But I'll just go ahead and tell the story in a few seconds. You don't have to tag me in chat. It reminds me of an argument that I had with Neil deGrasse Tyson the very first time we met, where he had been called out for not using the atheist label. And short conversation was, after a back and forth, he said, if everybody used the term the way you did, Matt, I'd be happy to use it. And I said, okay, here's the question, Neil. If people start using astrophysicist wrong, are you going to give up that word too? Or are you going to use your massive fucking soapbox and megaphone to correct them on what astrophysicist means? And Neil was like, that's a good point. You can tell your fans I said it was okay to call me a douche, which was me winning a debate or discussion with Neil. I'm gonna raise that till the day I'm dead, because who knows if he and I are ever going to get a chance to hang out or talk again. But it's cool.
Yeah.
But you could be right in your concerns, Noah. We just don't have the data. I lean toward, as much as I talk trash about Richard Dawkins being transphobic and supporting transphobic things lately, I still like the guy and toured with the guy, and I know stuff, about him. And one of the things that he said when somebody asked him a question like this about the language that he uses, because he's an intelligent, preeminent scientist, and sometimes he's going to use language people don't know. And they were like, shouldn't you use, more common language? And we were sitting there, and my answer on this is, I'm pretty good. If I have any skill at anything, it's in taking complex subjects and explaining them in terms that anybody or almost anybody can grasp. I can talk, hey, to just about anybody. If Richard is more elite in his language, somebody was poking him saying, isn't that a problem? And he goes, no, they can go look it up in a dictionary, because his focus is on accuracy and education. And so if I say a word they don't know, they can look it up. I think part of the problem is that we all know not everybody's going to do that. And we need to reach the people who aren't willing to do that. So you might be right, Noah, but as it stands right now, I'm going to keep using that little example to try and educate and take a quick win and move on.
Yeah. And
I like that. And I have to, sorry. Yeah, I have to admit, when you said hydrophobic, I thought you were referring to like fear of water, or at least because I've heard it used that way. That's what the doctors were talking about when they were telling me, I should get rabies shots.
Yeah. No. You jumped in so quick. I didn't even have to go down that route, because there's hydrophobia in the sense of a person might be afraid of the water. And then there's hydrophobic in the sense that this substance or this surface is hydrophobic.
Yeah,
is it?
That's right.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I like that analogy. That I think that would demonstrate it perfectly. If I tell someone they're being transphobic, I don't mean that you're afraid of it. I mean that you're being, like what Josie said, anti-trans.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes you have to use language that makes it easier to get through, because and this is one of the reasons why I use anti-trans a lot, is because I don't want to, when I'm talking and I'm doing advocacy, I only have so many minutes to be able to chat with somebody like on the street about things. So if I'm doing a mass message and people stop reading at transphobia because they don't understand that term, I get lost. People get lost in that term, rather than being like, this bill is anti-trans, or this is an anti-trans bill. People can see that and read that, rather than saying this bill is transphobic. Because then all of a sudden people are like, well, what is transphobic? It's like transphobic is mean fear. And it's like so frustrating that we actually have evolved our language to be more clear for people to understand what that actually is.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, thank you guys so much. I kind of feel like I'm reaping what I sowed for voting for Trump in 2016. So I'm into weather quite a bit, and I'm seeing like this Project 2025 thing. They're trying to privatize weather forecasting, and that's been a whole. Anyway, I appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
I appreciate what you guys do there. I'm like the only atheist in my entire immediate family, and that's been my grandfather got me a whole packet of apologetics on the Numbers chapter 5. I'm sure you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. So that's been interesting. All right, thank you.
Sweet. Thanks so much. No, I appreciate the call. That was
So Matt,
go ahead,
you
Josie.
want to know an interesting like trivia thing?
Of course.
What is the thing that both parties trust when it comes to news? Like what outlet?
The Associated Press.
The Weather Channel. People
Really?
love the Weather Channel. Like people will trust the Weather Channel along party lines. It's actually the only bipartisan outlet that exists in our current climate. So the fact that Project 2025 goes after the Weather Channel is actually a really bad thing for their base. Like it really is something that is so stupid to attack because it's like the one thing that everybody likes. It's really interesting.
It's wild because I wonder if the opposition to the Weather Channel is because they know that people trust it and they're afraid that the Weather Channel is going to be a lot more vocal about climate change initiatives.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, possibly, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's like by a 53-point margin, people love the Weather Channel. It's wild.
Well, we got more
wild.
callers, and
Yes.
including a theist. So Matthew's calling from Ohio, pronouns are he, him, wants to talk about his reason for maintaining a belief in a God. Matthew, you're on with Josie. I'm assuming, forgive me, I'm just trying to shorten part of the introduction thing here. I'm assuming that you believe in some sort of either classical theistic God or a Christian God, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
I believe in the Christian God. I'm a Christian through and through.
Cool. So what's your reason for maintaining that?
Yeah, I just want to greet Josie. I call on the Transatlantic show a lot, and hopefully I can call tomorrow.
Your phone's breaking up.
Conversation. Oh.
You may want to just move your mouth a little bit away from the microphone.
It sounds better now.
Is that better?
It's still chopping up a little bit, but try it. Go ahead.
Yes, Matthew, I remember you.
How do I sound now?
That sounds better. That actually does sound better.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to greet you guys because I call frequently there. Also, I know Matt told me not to call back on the hang up until I had a demonstration of someone who was free from sin.
Oh, you thought that you argued that Christians can become, can reach a point where they no longer sin.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, and I said Jesus. I would say Jesus is a good example of that because he showed that we can be human beings and not sin.
No, that's wow. Okay, so first of all, your audio is still chopping up a little bit. Let me see if I can address this really quickly. According to Christian theology,
I'm not sure if it's my end or your end. It could be, you guys sound
it's on your
choppy
end.
too.
It's on your end.
Yeah.
Within Christian theology,
let me
or
switch
at least
to my 5G and see if that works.
Yeah, switch to
better?
headphones or something, or use your handset.
you can't just do is that better? You have to talk more than that to be able to assess it. Just listen for a minute.
Hello.
We'll check,
is this better?
We'll check it in a minute. Just okay.
We'll check in a second, but listen to Matt.
I'm going to mute for a second. According to Christian theology, Jesus is God. And so while there are views that he was completely human and completely God, which doesn't make any sense, and there were some that he was just human and some that he was just God, where is your evidence that Jesus existed and never sinned, and that this is a demonstration that Christians, because Jesus wasn't a Christian, can reach the point where Christians can reach the point that they don't sin?
Well, that's why I'm saying Jesus is the example for Christians. He was fully man and fully God.
But
And because if you're born again of the Holy Spirit, you're just as He is on this earth.
no, no. What you're describing is not remotely consistent with Christian theology. Have you got a complete, you have a completely esoteric version of Christianity, right?
Meaning,
Esoteric, meaning you're the only one that believes the crap that you actually believe, as opposed to it's not part of a standard orthodoxy within a denomination, right?
I would say that it's not the standard. What we get today, I would definitely agree with that. But I wouldn't say I'm the only one that believes it.
So do you have any way of demonstrating that Jesus existed, never sinned, and that this is representative of what Christians can be?
The best I have is that you can do it according to the scriptures.
The best you can is what?
The scriptures.
Yeah, we can't live a life. We can live a life free from sin according to the scriptures.
What scripture says that? Because we went through this last time, and you did not give a scripture.
Peter.
You did not. Why are you interrupting me? You did not give a scripture that said that last time. So let's try it again. What scripture have you got today?
Yeah, 1 Peter 4, 1 and 2.
Okay. So it says, for as much then as Christ hath suffered for us in the flesh, arm yourselves likewise with the same mind, for he that suffered in the flesh hath ceased from sin, that he no longer should live the rest of his time in the flesh to the lusts of men, but to the will of God.
Right. The lust of men leads to sin.
Sorry?
The lust of man leads to sin. So if you no longer live the rest of your life in the flesh to the lust of men, you won't sin.
I'm sorry, your phone is breaking up left and right.
I think what he said was the lust of sin or the lust of man is if once you don't have that, then you are more godlike, with free from sin. I'm sorry, now I confused myself by saying it over again.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you cease from sin because you're not giving into the lust of men. It says no longer living the rest of your time in the flesh to the lust of men, but to the will of God.
Okay.
But
where's the
okay.
demonstration that people can do that?
Well, like I said, Jesus shows us in the flesh that we as human beings don't have to sin.
Matthew. Okay. Let me see if I can do this better. You believe that the scripture says Christians can stop sinning. Where's the evidence that they actually can? Who?
As Christians, we believe that.
Who is the example?
We don't have. You can no longer sin.
Who is the human example? Who is the Christian example that stopped sinning?
I would say Jesus is the human example.
Jesus was not a Christian.
Yeah. Jesus was not a Christian, and Jesus is also a deity like a part of God is like, and I understand that you don't believe that, or you do, but I just don't understand how, like, in the idea of like the proving of it all, but like, I don't understand how you say we should compare ourselves to a God and therefore we are free from sin.
Well, that's
where I get lost, because I used to be
a
atheist.
That's the power of Christianity. Yeah, that's the power of Christianity is that we.
You're not demonstrating the power of Christianity. You're talking about what you believe. So when I ask, where's your example of somebody that never sinned? You point to Jesus. Do you have anybody else? Do you have any other Christian that's ever lived up to that example? Or any Christian at all?
Well, even if I was to present one, how would I demonstrate that?
I don't know. I'm not the one making the claim. Maybe you shouldn't make claims if you don't have any way to demonstrate them, but that's your problem, not mine. By the way,
Well, I would just
let's
say Jesus is
assume,
the best
no.
demonstration.
When I say by the way, that means I'm still talking. So, by the way, let's assume that I grant you that Jesus was somehow a Christian and sinless, and that there's at least one other person who was sinless. How does that in any way demonstrate that there's a God and that Christianity is true?
So, well, if we were to live it out as Christians, which I think Christians should believe this, like we agreed, I don't think it's a mainstream belief. I think people would see what true divine nature is.
That's not the question.
Matthew,
I'm going to ask the question again.
Yeah, go for it.
How, even if I granted you that Jesus existed and was sinless, and that some other Christian became sinless after that example,
Yes.
how does that demonstrate that Christianity is true and that God exists?
Because it demonstrates the divine nature.
No, that's gobbledygook. When you say it demonstrates the divine nature, what the hell does that even mean? I asked, how does that demonstrate that Christianity is true and there's a God? Are you saying that that can only be accomplished by the divine? How do you know that?
Because that's what the divine nature is. When we define
how do you know what the divine how do you know what the divine nature is?
According to Christianity, is not giving into the lust of man.
You don't get to use the Bible as the definition and then claim that it fulfills it. I'm asking you for a demonstration, because if I take the Bible away from you, because the Bible is the claim, not the evidence for the claim, and I say, okay, you can't point to the Bible because it's not evidence, it's the claim, and I'll grant you that Jesus was sinless and that somebody else became sinless. Please tell me how that proves that a God exists.
So the Bible is where we get our information from, Jesus and the divine nature.
Matthew, tell me how that proves that a God exists.
Right. As I'm explaining to you, the divine nature explained by Christianity and by the Bible is that we do
Matthew,
not
mention the Bible. Mention the Bible one more fucking time. I double dog dare you. You do not get to say, this is what the Bible says, therefore it's fucking true. I already know what the Bible says. I'm asking, how do we know it's true? How does I'm bent over backwards here, Matthew, to let you on one more fucking time with this esoteric nonsense that is absolutely a version of Christianity that is not a part of anything that anybody should give a shit about, because it doesn't represent anybody but Matthew. And I've said, okay, I'll grant for the sake of argument that Jesus existed and was sinless, and that some other Christian, by that example, also became sinless. How does that prove God? Last chance. How does that prove God?
Do you understand the divine nature, what I mean when I say that?
No. And I've said that 2 or 3 times. Answer the fucking question.
So in order to do that, I'll have to explain the divine nature again.
Oh my God.
If you mention the Bible in this divine nature, like if I'm just walking through the world and I've never read the Bible, and how would you explain to me I'm witnessing divine nature without using the Bible?
Oh, that would be a challenge. I would say that for me, as you're living life, you see that. So as human beings, we give into a lot of things, which is lust. So do you understand what I mean by the lust of man?
I don't give a fuck what you mean by the lust of man, Matthew. Do you understand what a logical argument is that's supported by evidence and is valid and sound in structure? The answer to that question is either yes or no.
Yes, I understand a logical argument.
Then present a logical argument that is valid and sound, that demonstrates how a sinless individual demonstrates that a God exists. Last chance. I'm not fucking kidding around.
So the example that I give is when we do not give into lust, and as human lust or lust of man.
Matthew, you clearly don't know what a fucking syllogism is that is valid and sound. I didn't say, don't give me an example that's based on the lusts of man. I asked you for a syllogism. What's a syllogism, Matthew?
Can you explain?
What is a syllogism?
He's asking you
I
to
don't know.
tell him what a syllogism
Then why the fuck did you just tell me a minute ago that you knew what a fucking valid and sound syllogism is? Why are you lying to me, Matthew?
You asked. I didn't hear the syllogism part. All I heard was, do you understand what a logical argument is?
Okay, what's a logical argument?
An argument that uses premises to make a point.
To make a point? So how do you tell
It's a
if
conclusion.
a logical argument is valid in structure?
Say it again.
How do you tell if a logical argument is valid and sound?
I would think, as with your own demonstration, does it make sense?
No. What does it mean for a
No.
logical argument to be valid and sound?
For me, it would just be something that I can
It's
understand.
not a
and it
for you
makes sense to
fucking
me.
question, Matthew. It's not a for you question. This isn't true for you. What does it mean for an argument to be valid and sound? Go.
For it to make sense.
Matthew, you're a liar. Don't call me back. You don't understand what validity
A
and soundness
plus
is. You
B
don't know what a
equals
logical
C.
argument is. You don't know what a syllogism is. You don't understand Christianity. You don't understand how to make an argument. You don't understand evidence. You don't understand anything at all that we've discussed in multiple things. Don't bother calling me.
Yeah. Oh, are we done? Is that over?
Yep.
Okay.
It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead,
So,
Josie. Sorry.
so Matt actually has a problem with this in the previous times that he's called in the Transatlantic Holland show, which is I said this. I was like, is there a difference between gender and sex? And he was like, he finally got to the point where he's like, yes. And I was great. And I was like, wonderful. I was like, we finally got there. And I said, is a trans woman, a blonde-headed woman, a cis woman, and a trans woman all are all part of the category of woman as a gender? And he was like, no. So he doesn't understand the logical argument structure, and I think that's what needs to happen. And Philosophy 100, go take a college class, go find out, take a logic class. Like, it really isn't that difficult to be able to learn these
I'd be
things.
happy. I'd be happy to. I've already posted videos on my YouTube describing this, and there are Wikipedia articles that you can go to, and there's a Stanford Philosophical Library. The internet is full of resources. If you come on this show ready to defend your beliefs, you shouldn't be surprised by much of anything. I've been doing this for 20 years, give or take. And I keep asking the same questions, and I keep talking about the same things. There are people who've watched me for nearly 20 years who are probably like, oh, here he goes. He's going to talk about validity and soundness. That maybe they didn't know what it meant 20 years ago. And you definitely don't, Matthew. And that's fine. There's plenty of people that don't know. But if you don't know, say you don't know. Don't you dare tell me you know.
Yeah.
I'm asking because I'm hoping that if I say, do you know what a valid and sound logical argument is? And you say yes, and I say, present one, that I've just managed to tell you exactly what you need to do. But if you lie and say you know what it is when you don't, then you didn't get any sort of instruction or anything out of it. You were just waiting for your turn to speak again. You were just waiting for your next chance to preach. This ain't the fucking show for that.
No.
If you,
no, it's not.
I appreciate the fact that maybe your A game isn't where somebody else's A game was, but the second you start lying and pretending you know stuff when you don't, you're going to end up looking really, really foolish in this format. And that's not my goal. I don't come in here multiple times every week going, hey, honey, get ready. We're going to expose just how weak-minded all these theists are. I just defended this bullshit an hour ago.
I know.
That's not where we're at. But also, Matthew, I didn't call you, and I don't go door to door saying, Will you tell me what a logically valid and sound syllogism is? Can you demonstrate the difference between validity and soundness? Are you aware that validity goes to structure and soundness goes to the truth of premises? And so therefore, a logical argument that's valid in structure means that if the premises are sound, then it necessarily leads to a conclusion that should also be accepted. Boom.
Yeah.
I don't do that. Just all you got to say is you don't know. And you know what? I would have explained it to you. But when you say you know,
Right.
you stop us from explaining it to you. And then you don't learn, and nobody else learns either.
And that's 100%. And honestly, I'm starting to remember the conversation, and it was actually this. So the first claim that I made for Matthew was, do some women have penises and some women don't? Right? And he was like, no, they can't. So not believing that trans women can be women, right? And then I finally got to a point where it was a separation between sex and gender. And he said, yes, there's a difference. And I'm like, great. Do some women have penises and some women don't? And he was like, no. And I'm like, there you go. It's like, why are you saying one thing and then not do another? And that's the logical argument, right? If there's a separation between sex and gender, and if that is so, then some women have penises and some women don't. That's the logical conclusion. That's what logic is. That's what a sound argument is. If there is a difference, then therefore there are women with penises and there are women with not. Like, that's simple. It's that simple. Go do understand logic, Matthew. Go study logic. There's so much to it. There really is. And we're not trying to be pretentious. It's just the fact that when you understand logic, then you can have a conversation. It's the foundation of debate, right? Then once you understand logic, then you can understand what a fallacy is. Then you can actually understand what these things are. And then that's when you actually have intellectual discourse. And you can't have intellectual discourse if you don't understand the fundamentals of logic.
And it's partially if what Josie says right on. By the way, Josie, Arden's got a message for you in Discord. I've reached a point where, so I used to just point out fallacies on the show just by name. Oh, that's an, argumentum ad populum. That's a reductio ad absurdum. This is, well, that's not a fallacy, but I mean, that's a style of argument. This is, an argumentum ad baculum. And then I was like, well, let's not use the Latin. Let's go argument from the stick or a threatening argument. And then I realized, what good does it do? Actually, my ex-wife Beth pointed this out to me. If I say that's an argument from ignorance, people who don't know what fallacies are, don't understand what fallacies are, and definitely don't know them by name, they think I just called them stupid. If I say that's an argument from ignorance and you don't know anything about fallacies, it feels like somebody's calling you stupid. That has nothing to do with the argument from ignorance fallacy. And so if you don't understand logical arguments, you're not going to understand fallacies. And I think there's tons of people out there who just don't understand the basics of logic and how important it is to avoid fallacies. Because if your argument is fallacious, it is useless, not false. Don't focus on the don't focus on the false part of it. Fallacious is useless. It means that we cannot have any confidence in whether the conclusion is true or not. That's the key to a fallacious argument. And so you could present an argument where your premises are true, where everything you say in the premises are true, and yet the conclusion does not follow because of a fallacy. And you're like, what? I said true things. Yes, but the argument is structured in a way where it does not lead to a true conclusion. I'm gonna probably redo a chunk of that because if you go back to the foundations, the 101 series, the videos that I did 15, 17 years ago, whatever, on YouTube that are up on my channel, those all need to be redone. We got 3 callers left that I want to try to get to.
Yeah.
I didn't know if sweet.
I'm fine.
We got the answer. Here we go. I'm going to knock this one out. So this is Will, or one of our regulars who's here in chat. Will, pronouns are he, him in Washington, has a question about impossibility. You're live.
I got to follow that guy?
No,
hey,
I can put you back in the queue if you want.
No, I'm totally kidding. Thank you so much for taking my call. Yeah, no,
Sure.
mine should be pretty quick. Yeah, so I know, Matt, you're often saying when talking about like possibility and impossibility that they both need to be demonstrated independently. Am I getting that basically?
Yeah, if you claim X is possible, you've adopted a burden of proof, and if you claim X is impossible, you've adopted a burden of proof.
Right. And so here's my question: is like, is impossibility actually like possible to demonstrate? Because like
Yes.
we don't have like a. Okay.
It's impossible for a triangle to have more than 180 degrees of internal angles in standard Euclidean geometry. It is impossible for a bachelor to be married. It is impossible for the square root of 2 to be rational. Those can all be demonstrated. The only thing you need to demonstrate impossibility is a specifically or a narrowly defined or accurately defined statement. It's kind of like saying, well, you can't prove a negative. Yes, you can. We prove negatives all the time. What you can't prove is a universal negative where the properties of that negative expand further than we are able to know, explore, or understand. So there are certain things that might be impossible, but we'll never be able to show it. And there are certain things that we may think are impossible, but we can't demonstrate it and may forever be prevented from demonstrating it. And there are other things that are impossible and we know it and can show it.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I
So
think like
yeah.
for the triangle, right? Like the claim is you can't have more than 180 degrees in Euclidean geometry, right? Like
Right.
there may be some other geometry that exists, but in the claim in the sentence itself, the Euclidean geometry makes that a true impossibility, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
There are things that may be impossible that we may not be able to prove. And so we should be exercise caution in what we assert, because anybody could claim something's impossible and not have any way of demonstrating it. And if what they're claiming is ultimately, unfalsifiable or something we can't demonstrate, then they're going to do the same thing that people do elsewhere, which is, well, I did it. Now you got to prove me wrong. And that's not how that works.
Right. But like demonstrating impossibility in like a lot of these, because like where it comes up is a lot of the like, well, how can you, say it's like, if you can't say it's impossible that, there's a God out there and, you can't say it's impossible that the universe is infinite or whatever, then, on and on and on. And like demonstrating that level of possibility or impossibility would seem to be beyond our ken, as it were.
Yes.
But it's not like theoretically impossible to do those, to demonstrate those impossibilities. It's just impossible from our like vantage point and capacity.
Hey, Will, the screener included your screen name, but I didn't read it out to anybody because I didn't want to necessarily dox anybody. So I didn't know if we were supposed to hide that information or not.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, yeah, I don't care.
I think there's a point in a conversation where that form of argumentation just becomes useless, right? Like the idea of like, oh, but we can never guess in like a million years, and then you get lost in like modernism and the understanding of like, because then it just becomes like this absurdum, right? Where it's like, well, actually, gravity may work differently in another place, and da 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 da, and it's like.
Yeah.
I think that when people start getting to that point of an argument, it's already lost, right? At that point, like there is a I think an understanding of reason when you're having a conversation, right?
Right.
You can do it with anything that's sufficiently defined. Like this is a 20-sided spin down die that's a life counter for Magic the Gathering. You can roll this for the rest of time and you'll never roll a 47. It's just not possible to roll a 47 on there.
Right.
But there are
So
other things where we talk about. This is why when somebody says it's impossible for something to come from nothing, I'm like, okay, cool. How did you reach that conclusion?
yeah,
I agree with you that intuitively it seems like you couldn't get something from nothing. How could you even act on a nothing? It's absurd. But then when you start asking, it's like, do you have a nothing that you've ever been able to investigate? No. And what would a nothing be? I mean, if it's nothing, you can't interact with it or investigate. So there's some absurdity there. And so we just give it a pass of, yep, something can't come from nothing. Except that we don't know that and we can't demonstrate
Right.
it. It seems perfectly reasonable in an intuitive sense, but it would be much better to say there's no demonstration that I'm aware of something coming from nothing or a nothing even existing. I don't even know what that would be, but yeah, I got sidetracked there.
Yeah.
That hopefully it cleared
it's
it up.
it's about practicality. I think practicality and like just being able to converse with humans is important, right? Like we can have the big
Yeah.
philosophical conversation about what is nothing and nothing is this and everything like that, and then pass the bong. But like, you know what I mean? But like, at the end of the day, I think like most of the times, like in practicality and real world, like reason, it comes back to that 20-sided die, right? You roll that die, it's never
Mhm.
going to be 47, right? Like, and I
Right.
think that's where a lot of real world, like we can put our hands on it, we can see those things, and therefore that's where we get a lot of our logical reasoning from. And I think it's important to start there before we go to what is nothing, right? Like I think that's kind of where
Mhm.
it goes.
Nothing is
Totally.
where half of these calls go.
And I mean,
Yes.
part of the reason that I kind of wanted to talk about it was partly just like, you listen to a lot of these people or you have these conversations a lot and you hear them making these arguments and like they kind of cut the incredulity like in these very like decisive patterns, like to accommodate, like they're like, oh well, nothing, you can't get something from nothing, but also the universe might be infinite, so you can't rule out a god because if everything's like, if the universe is so infinite and everything's so possible, how come there's not a place where you could get something out of nothing? That there's a nothing in a not place. Like, why is that impossible? And, it's just like I'm like, am I missing something, or is this actually crazy? And I think I got my answer more or
Yeah.
less.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Well, thank
Will.
you, Will. Nice to finally
Yeah, thank
talk
you
to
guys so much, and it was really a pleasure to talk to both of you. Josie, you're a flippin' superhero.
Aw,
Yes.
thank you. I
Josie
appreciate
is a superhero. Thanks, Will. Couple quick things. We got 2 more calls I want to get to. I'm going to read off the upcoming shows now that I've got the full list for this week. One is obviously tonight. It's me and Josie. A huge thank you to you, Josie, for filling in on almost no notice. When I found out that Andrew wasn't going to be able to make it this week because there's just too much going on, we will get Andrew on some other time. It was, oh my gosh, who can we get given what we're talking about and everything else? And Jimmy was like right away, what about Josie? And I was like, yes. See if Josie can come on. I'm happy to have Josie on. So yay.
Always happy.
So you can see more of Josie tomorrow at 2 p.m. on right here on this network on the Transatlantic Call-In Show along with Luxander. And then on Sunday, the Sunday show at 2 o'clock is going to be Jimmy and Eve. The Sunday show after dark at 7 o'clock is going to be me and Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels. The following Monday's Skeptalk is going to be Shannon Q. Tuesday's Chewed Gum. We haven't confirmed the guest, but Alyssa is going to be there. I have the name. I just can't tell you. Haha, I know something you don't know. I think I'm probably wrong, but anyway, next Wednesday, the hang up is scheduled. I didn't book a guest because I'm coming back from surgery. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I'm having about half of my mouth removed, not the mouth, but the teeth. But that's the plan for next week. If I get back off the plane in time, I didn't want to book a guest in case I got back and wasn't able to do the show or couldn't do it in time. So I appreciate everybody's patience of seeing, what's going to end up happening next Wednesday. Let's get to the last couple callers here. This one, They've been on hold for a while, and they have, this is Ace in Pennsylvania, pronouns are him, has a question for Josie about if religious folk believe their internal feelings of relationship with God makes that relationship real, how is that any different from a stalker that believes they have a relationship with their victim? Give us a little extra context there, Ace, so that Josie can sort this out.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Josie. Pleasure to speak with both of you. Thank you for taking my call.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So I was a Christian for most of my life, was raised in it, and I was raised in a very, I'll just say, hardcore fundamentalist evangelical family. And so I've been deconstructing, and this was one of the things that's come up for me here in just recent weeks as I've been thinking about stuff. Was actually watching on YouTube a replay of one of the TACIS shows, and this is the thought that came to me, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, well, how is that really any different? Is that a flaw in my thinking that maybe there is a difference there? Is this some kind of like parasocial thing that most people do, or is it really just that same kind of awful, creepy, delusional thinking? What do you guys think?
Yeah. So are you speaking about the conversation we had about the faith-based claim that somebody has within like their belief in God in the religion versus the person saying that I like gender identity is a woman? Is that where this question is stemming from?
Well, it was kind of stemming from, I can't remember exactly who the caller was from the show, but they were talking about how they know that, Jesus is real because they have this, personal experience of a relationship with them, with Jesus. And it's just like, aside from the fact of whether or not Jesus is even real, like, that's still creepy, to me anyway.
Yeah, so and this is in relation to someone having a stalker relationship where they think that they have a relationship with someone who is a victim that isn't connected. Is that where you're going with this call, correct?
Right.
Okay. So one of the things is and I will start is about the understand that there is when we think of a relationship between two humans, right? That means that there is a consensual understanding that people are either in love with each other, friends with each other, have, this, and the word is, consensual, right? Like that is the key word here, right? So, that is the big difference, right? Like somebody's internal belief that, oh, I'm in love with this person and this person is in love with me, that's where things break apart versus the person's personal feelings of like a belief within their God, because there isn't another person involved that has to consent for somebody to have that internal belief what they have about a God and a religious claim. So that is the big difference, right? Because consent is required, right? That's why it's a crime, right? To have that relationship, and that's the main difference, right? Is that there's actually a demonstrable harm that is caused when you don't have that consenting relationship with another individual. And I think that is why it's creepy if somebody has an unconsenting relationship with somebody that they're infatuated with versus somebody who is like, oh, I have this relationship with God or Jesus or whatever they say isn't actually harming anyone versus the other is actually demonstrated harm.
Right. That makes sense. It just seems to me that, like, if you're going to put the experience of a relationship with Jesus on the pedestal and say that that's what makes it so that you can say for sure that God exists and, it's all true, it feels like it's on the same par, at least where I'm at in what I'm deconstructing with. It feels like it's on the same par as somebody saying, oh, well, because I have this internal experience of a relationship with so-and-so, that means it's real, right? Like,
and that's delusional, right? Because you are basically not letting somebody consent to reciprocate that relationship, right? And that's where
right.
that's where the harm is. And yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, and I was just going to say that, yeah, that's exactly it. But instead of harming the supposed victim of the stalker, they want to push. It's like that harm gets deferred to everybody else because, you know, everybody else doesn't agree that their Jesus relationship exists. And, you know, and then they have to extrapolate, especially the evangelicals have to extrapolate it out too well because you don't believe in Jesus and you don't have a personal relationship the way that I do with him. Now you're going to hell.
I see what you're saying. I'll toss it to Matt on that one about like the relationship with a deity and saying, okay, my relationship with this deity makes it real. I will toss it over to Matt on that one.
So
Sure.
the notion that like somebody thinks God's real and they're in a relationship, if they say that the relationship makes it real or somehow proves it, it can't. There's nothing about my relationship with anybody that can prove, like my relationship with Arden, I can't prove to you what's actually going on in my head. And if I have, instead of doing the stalker thing, let's say that I just tell you, I've got an invisible friend, or I've got a girlfriend, she goes to another school, you wouldn't know her. And if I can't present any evidence for the relationship other than I say there's a relationship, then I haven't met my burden of proof. So anybody who's saying the relationship is the evidence, the relationship is the evidence for you. Like I know what my relationship is with Art. But in order for me to prove to somebody else, it'd be really easy. I love Arden. Arden loves me. You want to know why I don't have to just say that the relationship is proof? Hey, honey, I love you.
Love you too.
See? Done. Why can't any theist ever do anything remotely like that with their relationship with a god? I'm in a real relationship. If they're in a real relationship, they should be able to do that too. And I wouldn't compare it to stalking, because stalking is a legitimate problem that potentially affects a real person. That's about you thinking you're in a relationship with someone who's real and exists and you don't. That's how John Hinckley felt about his obsession with Jodie Foster, to the point that it led him to try to assassinate the president. It's much more like I have someone who I can't demonstrate is real, and they want me to tell you this message. It's not far removed from the aliens are beaming messages into my brain and I need to tell you what they are. And they're the ones that have a burden of proof to overcome that. And so that's the best I can do on what are the differences between those 3 or 4 scenarios, and why saying the relationship proves it's real. It may do that for you, although that's dubious too, because there are plenty of people who think they're in a real relationship who may not be. But even if it proves it for you, it can't prove it for anybody else.
That's right. Does that make sense, Ace? Because, you know, another thing that you also said too was the idea, I have a relationship with God, so therefore my God is real, therefore you have to do what my God says. Now we're reaching a point where it's like, now that internal belief and relationship that you have with yourself and their religion is now imposing on another, right? And now the burden of proof is necessary for you to be able to say, oh, your God loves you. Can I hear him say that to you right now? Right? And that because now that person's making a claim that is external to the person.
Gotcha. I see. Well, I really appreciate hearing your feedback. I've been trying to work through a lot of this stuff in my head for some years now.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you coming on and exploring it with us.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Have a good night.
Yeah.
You too.
Oh, there's so many, you know, we've got one more caller left. I want to get to that. Then we're doing super chats.
Yeah.
I've done this for a long time, and I'm not going to remotely pretend I always do it right. Depending on what the day's like and just how absurd it is, what somebody says, my patience could be legendary or virtually non-existent. And Matthew is called several times, and I'm willing to keep giving him a shot.
And our
but
show.
He's not. Yeah, I'm willing to keep giving him a shot. I know I said don't call me again. What I mean, for clarity, Matthew, is don't call me and tell me you understand something you don't. I'd rather have a slower paced call like that and make progress that benefits everybody than just turn it into a, oh my God, you don't understand anything and blah, 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 and hang up. That's not my goal.
I agree.
Sorry with anybody who gets frustrated when it happens. I'm human. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got Ace, who's legitimately struggling with an idea and trying to figure out how best to phrase it or think about it. And a lot of times I may not know. 20 years on, and I still hear something. There are a few things that surprise me, but I do still hear something new on a regular basis, or something from a slightly different direction or perspective than I had really thought of it before. It's one of the reasons why I love to do this. Like, all these years later, I'm an obsessive learner. This is my therapy on Wednesday. This is where I get to hang out with, people who have questions and everything else. But oh my gosh, we've changed to a poll on what color I should dye my beard. Cool. I'm going to vote for that one.
I'm very interested. I've been voting too. I have been involved in these polls.
It's a good poll about whether I should dye my beard and what color. So make sure you get your votes in there.
Sorry, go on.
But when addressing a question like Aces, it exercises, hey, I know what they're talking about, and I know I've addressed this 100 times before in the past. But for me, the gaming aspect of this, and trust me, I don't think this is a game. When I say I'm gamifying the call-in shows, it's about, I play games with myself. How quickly and how accurately can I assess what the person is getting ready to say? That game might be a mistake. That game might be where I'm more likely to have a shorter fuse and should let them talk longer, because not everybody's going to get to where I'm going to get to at the same pace. I get that. You don't have to call in or write about it. I know it. Sometimes I put in a lot more effort than others. But I love this. Can you find another way? A better analogy, another spin on it, another way of saying the same thing you've said for years that might get one more person to be like, boom, there's a light bulb moment. I love watching people think. I love making people think. When it's not important, like on important issues, I don't fuck with people. When it's not important, I will fuck with people. I love riddles. I love board games. We played Secret Hitler, and I almost made somebody cry because they absolutely knew that I got the Hitler card. And I not only managed to convince everybody that I didn't, but I convinced them that I didn't after they had looked at it. And and all I did what anybody would do, which is, dude, I get it. I know what you think you saw, but I know what's on my card. And then I was able to point out other people who were taking actions that were more consistent with what we expected Hitler, to the point where they were questioning reality. Gaslighting is real. In the game is the only place. And by the way, that game's probably not a good game. People, it along with like Cards Against Humanity and other things, seem fun at first, and then you lose friends and stuff over them in the long run. But all right, final call for today.
I haven't played that one.
It's a good game it's kind of like, Werewolf or anything else where you're finding the imposter or the bad guy. All right, final call for today. Gregory in Arizona, pronouns are he, him, is calling in. Biden said it's time to turn down the temperature in regard to rhetoric and division, but then stated that Trump is a threat to democracy. How do we reconcile this? Hey, Gregory, welcome to the show. You're on with Matt and Josie. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. Hi, Matt and Josie. I just want to say real quick, thanks for responding to those emails I sent like a couple whiles, a little bit back. Like I appreciated, you taking time to respond to those.
Cool, thanks. What's the difference between rhetoric, dangerous rhetoric, and stating the truth?
Dangerous rhetoric would be like something that would, say, like dehumanize or cause, encourage violence. Well, rhetoric would be like a short form of a political belief or a statement, right?
Yep. Any persuasive speech is rhetoric, yeah. And
I'm sorry, I forgot the last one.
The last one is, how do you tell the difference between whether something is rhetoric, persuasive speech, and merely stating the truth?
Oh, I guess, I don't really know. Like, I think saying the truth would have
That's fine.
more, like, evidence.
No, it's fine. You're right. Because as somebody in chat already pointed out, I'm not stealing this idea, but this was the reason I was going down this road. Dangerous rhetoric may in fact be true. Any rhetoric may in fact be true. And so when somebody like Biden says it's time to turn that temperature in regard to the rhetoric, he's specifically saying, hey, let's not make this dangerous rhetoric. But when he says that Trump is a threat to democracy, that I don't view as dangerous rhetoric. That's simply true. Trump challenged the validity of an election, lied about voter fraud, inspired an inspired an insurrection. He's never inspired an erection, inspired an insurrection in an attempt to subvert an election, installed problematic judges that are subverting democracy. I don't know why I can't talk all of a sudden. He has a demonstrated history and stated goals of being a threat to democracy, including saying he wanted to be a dictator on day one for just one day, when the Supreme Court has basically said that he's virtually untouchable, any president is, on any official duties or core things with their job. And so that means right now that Trump could take bribes and payments in exchange for executive clemency, pardons, in exchange for favoritized treatment, treaties with foreign dignitaries, or not taking care of treaties. All of that, which would normally be illegal, he can now no longer be prosecuted for. And he has a demonstrated track record of either doing those things, encouraging those things, or not rejecting those things when specifically asked, hey, will you accept the outcome of the election? So when Biden says that Trump is a threat to democracy, I think that's a true statement. I don't think that Biden is standing up at a pulpit, screaming it and saying, let's take him out or fight, fight, fight. I think he's just saying this election is important and Trump is an existential threat to democracy, and we need to get out and vote.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I have to go back and kind of listen to the points you said to kind of takes me a little bit to process it. But the whole dictator thing, like he was talking about specifically for executive orders. Like, do you think it is good to point out that quote? Like it makes.
But he said
First of
it,
all,
though.
I'm not convinced that he only meant for executive orders or anything else. How many other presidential candidates have ever said that they want to be a dictator on day one in any way, shape, or form? How many other presidential candidates have refused to accept the election results?
Yeah, none that I know of.
Yeah.
Gregory, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
And I'm coming back about the turning down the temperature in regard to rhetoric and division. As you stated in the question, it's like, do you think saying that Trump is a threat to democracy is like dangerous rhetoric?
I don't think it is dangerous, but I think it might be a little bit like overstating things. Like I don't like to try to overstate things, and maybe because I haven't developed enough of a
Me
case,
neither.
like in my mind, for these things. But I kind of
Ye-
tend to avoid like using those like definite extreme statements. Like I think I don't know.
Absolutely. I understand, Gregory, and this is and I'm going to use this is the magic of Trump, and I hate
Ooh,
using it in this context, but
okay.
because Trump is so radical and uses such inflammatory language that he has forced politicians and people who speak on politics to have to match the words that he's using, right? Like Matt said, like no other president has ever said that they want to be a dictator in any context. No other president has ever denied an election. No other president has fomented a non-peaceful transfer of power. Like the United States and used to be the country in the world where we used to brag to the world saying we always have a peaceful transfer of power. We can no longer say that anymore because of these things. And because everything's been so ratcheted up, it forces us to say things like threat to democracy because he has said things on his True Social where he wants to eliminate the sections of the Constitution, right? No
Yeah.
president has ever said things like
Mhm.
this before. So
I have a
so
list.
it's really you're yeah, there really is it's sad, right? And I agree with you, Gregory. In most contexts, I don't like to talk about politicians in these very absolutist, extremist terms myself. But when you're talking about an individual that has done just the few things that I have just listed, it forces us to have to speak that way. And I think that, again, this is why I say it's the magic of Trump, is that people that aren't connected to politics and don't hear political rhetoric and aren't in the sauce like political professionals are all the time are like, oh my gosh, the Democrats are saying that he's a threat to democracy. Oh my gosh, the Democrats are saying that he wants to end abortion nationwide. Oh my gosh, the Democrats are saying that he is going to be a dictator. And it's like, and I know this because my mother is like this, right? My mother feels that it's like, oh my gosh, you're saying such radical things. When I tell my mother that Trump wants to deny my ability to exist as a trans woman in this country because he wants to make my medicine illegal and wants to eradicate my existence, my mother's like, oh my gosh, that would never happen. Or when I say, hey, it's out there right now that they want to reverse and end gay marriage, my mom's like, gay marriage has been around for so long. How could he eliminate that? Right. And it's really, really frustrating because it's truth, right? We are speaking truth, but it's disguised as dangerous rhetoric. And I think that's why Matt asked that question of what's the difference between rhetoric and speaking truth. And that's where we are right now. And so how do you ratchet down a person that has demonstrated, said, and had actions that relate to the threat to the democracy that we know it in America, right? Without hiding the truth.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I have a mother that's very similar, in her beliefs. Like Trump would never do this, and being a very conservative Catholic, and then supporting Trump, who's been found liable for sexual assault and all those other things. Sorry, I don't know if I can say that,
Go ahead. No,
but
it's fine.
the yeah, and then so do you guys think that like Trump saying the whole bloodbath quote and then Biden saying putting Trump in the bullseye is similar rhetoric and that they're not violent in themselves? Like it's not wrong to say.
If Biden had said put Trump in the crosshairs, that would be the sort of potentially violent leaning language. The bullseye doesn't it's darts.
Yeah. I use the term in my own speeches and rhetoric when I'm doing political speak. I'm like, we have to paint the target, like the idea. Like I've actually used that, right? I'm like, we got to paint the target. The target is abortion, right? We need to make sure we protect it, right? I've used that type of rhetoric before. I also want to add context here, right? Trump said bloodbath. Trump said poisoning the blood of America to a large audience of people at a rally. Biden was talking to a closed door meeting with donors and was saying so therefore just on the context alone they are not comparable, right? Even if he wanted to buy the bullseye versus crosshair situation, the fact that he wasn't on a grand stage or in a political, presidential address saying we need to put a bullseye on Trump and da 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 da, right?
Yeah,
that's not.
that
He
would be a
didn't
little
do
different.
that would be very different. Yeah, exactly. But because Biden was talking to like a small room of political donors and was just using political rhetoric to try to express his point on the importance of this election, that is very different than what Trump was doing, making fun of Nancy Pelosi's husband being assaulted with a hammer and talking about how she's not protected, right? At a political rally. That's very different than what Trump was saying, lock her up, when it was talking about Hillary Clinton. That is very different than what Donald Trump put on True Social of Biden being hogtied in the back of a truck, right? Those are all things in context that are so different than anything that the Democrats have done.
It's about when you say there's going to be a bloodbath if I lose, when you're sharing images of Biden bound and put in the back of the truck, those are a different quality of rhetoric than saying we need to make sure that we're still targeting Trump. I get, crosshairs, bullseye, targeting. Oh, it all sounds violent. It also sounds strategic. And at no point has President Biden suggested that the Democrats are going to engage in violent retribution if he doesn't win. Trump was the first president. Let me rattle off my list. Trump was the first president in 28 years not to have a second term. He was the first president in 45 years not to release his tax returns. He was the first president in 89 years to lose the presidency, Senate, and House in a single term. He was the first president to be impeached twice. He was the first president to begin their term with a negative approval rating, the first to never reach an approval rating over 50%, the first to ask for and receive election assistance from a known foreign enemy, the first to refuse conceding after losing, the first to tell Americans the election he lost was a fraud, the first to incite an insurrection resulting in hundreds being charged and convicted, the first to have 81 associates charged with a crime, the first to lose their security clearance after leaving office, the first to have their home raided by FBI for espionage, the first to be convicted of 34 felonies, the first to add $8.4 trillion to the national debt in 4 years, the first to have zero public service record before being elected, the first to be taped detailing how he sexually assaulted women, the first to have 26 sexual assault allegations, and the first to be found liable for sexual abuse. Why the fuck is he even on the ballot? And how dare anybody saying that this individual who says that he only wants to be a dictator for one day and fomented an insurrection and poisoned the court so that they give him king-like powers, he is demonstrably a threat to democracy, and so are all of his supporters.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just like, how would you respond when people say, like, because there is a bloodbath term that is specific to economics, and when he was talking about for the industrial
Okay,
work
I give
in
up, Gregory. I give up.
Michigan.
Gregory, I give up. If you think it's reasonable to take his bloodbath thing as if it was talking about the economy, cool. He's still saying, if I don't get elected, the world's going to hell. Now he's just saying it economically. So do you think that the world's going to go to hell economically if he's not elected? Because his economic record
No,
is not impressive. Okay.
I don't
So
think
in
I don't
either
think
case, whether he
Gregory
meant
is
it
saying
as
that.
violence,
I think he's using
what-
a hypothetical. I think
whether
Gregory's not saying that he believes that. He's saying that people said that.
I know,
Just to
I
make it
know,
clear, Matt.
I know.
Okay.
I'm just saying, why on earth would you raise that if whether he meant bloodbath as violence or as economic destruction, he's either making a threat about what his followers will do or predicting an economic, catastrophe, just like he said the only way that the reporter being held by Russia was coming home is if he got elected. This is a guy who just manipulates all the time. Is what we talked about at the beginning of the thing. Is watching him manipulate RFK
absolutely.
Jr.
Yeah,
Gregory,
and
I appreciate the call, but
apologists are going to say what they say. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
appreciate the call, but I got to let you go. We got to get to super chats.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you, Gregory.
Because just wanting to know like the power of arguments on like whether it's worth bringing this up or not, because I've come across a lot of conservatives saying this to me directly. But yeah, thank you for taking my call, and I'll send thoughts and prayers that you recover fast from your surgery.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And
I'll say
Gregory,
thank
just
you if they
remember
work.
this. Yeah, and Gregory, just remember this about those people that are saying those things like, oh, he wasn't talking about a bloodbath and Percy was talking. Those people are going to vote for Trump no matter what. What you got to focus on are the people like your mom, the people that are actually going to be able to possibly vote against Trump. Like, I would not waste your breath with people who are trying to argue with you to tell you that Trump is not using violent rhetoric when he speaks. Talk to people who are persuadable, talk to people to vote against Trump. That is the better strategy than to argue with these people that are not going to be persuaded.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Cheers, thanks. All right. That completes the call-in portion for tonight's show, which is actually sad because I'm in one of those moods where I could probably take calls for another 2 or 3 hours, but I love Arden too much to make her sit through 2 or 3 more hours of this.
That's
so
fair.
Here we go. First of all, $199.99 from
Wow,
Grumpy Ball of
thank
Sunshine.
you.
Hey, Matt, is it possible for me to talk with you about something privately? Doing it in writing will probably take longer than a video phone call, but if you agree to talk, I'll accept whatever method you use. Yeah, I already replied in chat. You can email sans.deity@gmail.com, or you can message me on Facebook Messenger and just note that you're Grumpy Ball of Sunshine. And I can't promise anything. This is the thing. I'm happy to try to find time to interact with fans. It's not just, oh, you gave a bunch of money, I'll do it. I'm happy to try and find time for all of those things. I definitely want to do it to people who are contributing to the network like this. And so I will do everything in my power to do it. Just understand there's a lot going on, including oral surgery that I'm heading out for. But I'm happy to find time. And if it's time sensitive, if you've already emailed, cool. Except, nope. I don't see an actual email in yet from that, and nothing in Facebook Messenger, but I haven't checked the message request. So much appreciated either way. That's incredibly generous to take a flyer like that, and I'd be happy to find time for that.
Absolutely. Thank you. $10 from William Mattis. Hello, William. It's good to see you. Hi, guys. How's it going? Possible nerd cred destroyer, but I really dislike the original series of Star Trek. Rewatching TNG right now. Love to y'all. Stay safe and such. People are crazy. Bye. Aw, true.
I got issues with the original series as well. There's things I definitely like
Yeah.
about it, but and I got tons of problems with TNG. I did an episode for my Atheist Debates channel on the episode Darmok, because while it's a ton of people's favorites, it's also patently absurd. There is no logical path to a language like that. That somehow the words can't communicate a message without the metaphor. You have to have an understanding of the individual word. There's a problem with it, but I still love the episode. Darmok and Gelada Tanagra. 1999 from Tess. Good luck on your surgery, Matt. Hope you feel fast. Thank you so much. For those who are curious, I'm not going to go into it in great detail. I've inherited some bad teeth, and I've taken care of them rather poorly. And because of that, I've had, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about 9 teeth crack and break over the
my
last
God.
year and a half.
Do you grind your
And,
teeth as you sleep? Do you grind your
No.
teeth at night?
No,
Oh, wow.
but in any case,
Oof.
I'm going in for one surgery to have basically everything in the back half of the mouth removed. And then when that heals up, I go in and we'll remove what's left in the front. There'll be a couple teeth left, but we're basically going to replace it with implants and a fixture.
Yeah.
And then I'll have a purty smile, and more importantly, no more pain.
Yeah.
I'm between the mouth pain, the diabetic nerve pain, the pain in my head from callers who lie and won't answer the fucking question. I'm
That's
in a
the
lot of
biggest
pain a lot of the time. Yeah. I'm the biggest pain.
Yeah. $10 from Sheridan Bernasconi. Keith Olbermann said Tucker Carlson warned Trump to pick JD Vance or he would be I guess effed. It's on today's podcast. Off. Oh, interesting.
Okay.
That's interesting.
There are a lot of things I like about Keith Olbermann. I don't pay much attention to him anymore. And I don't know that I have strong confidence in everything he says. So that could be a typo too. Tucker Carlson might have warned Trump to pick JD Vance, or he would be offed, or he would be effed. Either one of those could be the case. I might check it out, but I'm dubious about the second and third hand reporting, especially in the current political climate.
That's true.
But also, let's imagine that Tucker Carlson warned Trump that he needed to pick JD Vance. Unless that actually was a threat of you will be killed. Anything other than a threat in there, it's no big deal. It's just like, I don't care. But if it was actually a threat, and somebody can probably share it and clear it up. You don't have to super chat again, but you can. I will look into it either way. Thanks for the tip on that.
Yeah, thank you.
$13.99 Canadian from Tariq Al-Safi. The claim everything in the universe is contingent, if true, then contingency is a property of the universe. So saying that the universe as a whole must also be contingent is a composition fallacy. No. If you were to say that because things in the universe, everything in the universe is contingent, then contingency is a property of the universe. So saying the universe as a whole must be contingent is a composition fallacy. Yes. You can't go from the specific to the general.
That's right.
And so, and by the way, everything in the universe is contingent upon the universe, but that doesn't tell you whether the universe itself is contingent on something or not. Just like, everybody who's alive, we'll stop there because I'm tired and I'm going to screw up the example when the example we just went through is just fucking fine. I don't know why you come up with another version of it.
$10 from Dante Verona. During this episode, I'm simultaneously watching footage of the Republican National Convention. I've seen horror films that are less grotesque. Oof. Hey,
It's
yeah.
true. That's true, but those
Yeah.
horror films tend to
True.
suck.
Yeah.
I'm good with some of them. Thanks so much, Dante.
Yeah.
$10 from Pibble Punk, half dog, half canine. Wait, what? Soon enough, I'm going to have to navigate socially transitioning at work. The prospect of using the women's room has me very worried about making people uncomfortable, feel unsafe. Any advice? I will shut up.
So yes. I would go to the bathroom that you are the most comfortable, and not have to worry about other people feeling uncomfortable or safe. If it becomes an issue where it's like, your work, if you are going to be coming out socially at work, just let people know. Where it's like, hey, I'm coming out. I use these pronouns. I identify as, and I'm just going to just say, gender X, whatever gender that is, male, female, non binary, and I'm going to be using these spaces. Just get it out in the open right away, right? And at that point you navigate that. But I hope you're in a state where you will legally be able to say that's going to be allowed. But yeah, just go ahead and just go. I think a lot of people have more anxiety than the reality of the situation. So yeah, that's my suggestion. Obviously, safety is paramount for you. For you, that's the most important thing, because right now we have evidence to believe and know that a trans woman, in particular, going to a male bathroom is more dangerous for the trans woman. So do what is safe for you. Yeah.
$10.01 from CJNOC71. Oh, yeah, no.
It's fine. Yeah, go for it.
Matt, your thoughts on using the term agnostic atheist? I thought I heard you say that if one is an atheist, why address your stance on knowledge as well? Not necessary to add this word, maybe. So there's a lot of different usages of all those terms. I did a video. There's one on my channel about the labels. Here's the thing. There's a proposition. Some God exists. If you are convinced that proposition is true, you are a theist. If you are not convinced that thing is true, you are an atheist. If you're not convinced that that term is true, you might also be convinced that the statement is true. You might also be convinced the statement is false. And in that sense, you might be a strong atheist or an anti-theist, depending on those definitions. When people ask what you're believing, or are you convinced this is true, they're asking about belief. And so it doesn't make any sense to me to bring Gnosticism or agnosticism into it. But to the extent that the term agnostic makes sense, it's not a middle ground between theism and atheism. It is a knowledge claim. And since knowledge is a subset of belief, then the only way that the term agnostic can apply is to the theist term, because that's a positive belief that there is a God, and to the anti-theist or strong atheist position, which is a positive belief that there is no God. In those two, we're talking about a belief that may or may not count as knowledge. So you can be a Gnostic theist, an agnostic theist, or a Gnostic anti-theist or strong atheist, or an agnostic anti-theist or strong atheist. But in the weak atheist position of I'm not convinced this is true, that's not a belief claim. And therefore, it doesn't make sense to put the knowledge modifier with it. And that's the sum total of my thought.
I like hearing that. It's good for me to keep hearing that. Thank you. I always feel like I learn every time I hear that, because I tend to forget it and then I remember it again. So thank you.
If somebody says I'm an agnostic atheist, I'm going to assume that they're either a strong atheist and are advocating that they basically, believe there are no gods but don't know, in which case I don't have beef with them, or that they're confused about the agnostic label and that they're just acknowledging that they're not a strong atheist. or not a hard atheist. And I'm fine with that too. So I don't need to pick
Yeah,
nits about that label. But
that's
anytime
true.
I'm asked, I'm going to say, here's what my beef is with it. It's the same thing. Let me geek for just a second. And then you can read the next one. I keep and breed reptiles, epic loot exotics. Look us up. We have loads and loads of snakes. And because of that, I'm not an expert, but I'm very knowledgeable about Mendelian genetics as they apply to breeding stuff. And so you have in the genotype some gene that may present a change in the phenotype, what you see. Genotype is what's in the genes. Phenotype is what you see visually. And so there are some genes that are like incomplete dominance, which means you only need one copy of the gene from one of the parents, and that gene will show up once it's in the gene. It will also show up in the phenotype, something like orange dream, which changes the color of the snake to a slightly oranger color. If you have two copies of that gene, they'll sometimes call that a super orange dream, and it will definitely be a much oranger snake. But the correct terms are, if you have one copy of a gene, it's heterozygous. And if you have two copies of a gene, it's homozygous. But in the breeding community, we don't refer to incomplete dominance or any gene that'll show up in the phenotype. We generally don't refer to it as heterozygous, even though we should, and that's correct. We just call it, this one's got orange dream, this one's got super orange dream. And then for recessive traits like piebaldism or albinism, you have to get it from both parents. And so if it doesn't show up phenotypically, you can't see the albinism, but you know it got a gene from the parent, then you would say that's heterozygous. I wish we would talk about all genes as either heterozygous or homozygous, but I'm in the minority because most of the people who are breeding don't give a fuck about the accuracy of heterozygous, homozygous, and genes. They just want to make a cool looking snake. And so that's all they focused on is, does this have orange dream? Does this have inchy? Does this have lemongrass, lemonback, or whatever else? Anyway, that's my geek out genetics
It
moment.
sounds like you're saying it sounds like all cannabis strains.
Speaking of cannabis strains,
Learn something new. Yeah. $20 from Adam Burkholt. I apologize if I butchered that name. People are not weak-minded. They are deceivable, and anyone can be deceived. Deceived people can also be manipulative bastards because they may be part of how they were taught to be. For being one, I am forever sorry. Yeah?
me
That's you
too.
too? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Me too. It's the
Yeah.
reason why, I went so hard on the person talking about other people being weak-minded. This has nothing to do with religion, by the way. This is all about skepticism. It's something that James Randi talked about frequently. Sorry, I missed Randy. The key is the second you think you can't be fooled, it's too late. It's so in the wrestling world, because I'm a bit of a wrestling fan, there are marks and smarts, carny terms that rolled over into wrestling. And the marks are the ones who believe the narrative in wrestling and that, these people there, the great lie in wrestling, the great fake thing in wrestling is intent. And that's not always fake either. But, if you think The Rock and John Cena hate each other and are actually beefing because they care about a belt or whatever, you've missed your mark. And then there are also smart marks and other stuff. You take a look at the language of the con artists, because every single one of you can be deceived. I'd go so far as to bet that within the last year, maybe two, everybody has shared something on social media that isn't true that they thought was true. We all bought into something that should have been like an Onion article, but wasn't. And it's because we didn't bother to investigate. We just took it as verbatim. I've seen it all week this week. Oh, it was a piece of glass that hit his ear. And just sharing it. Oh, he went golfing the next day and just sharing it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times it doesn't matter. And a lot of times you're going to trust your sources And you're right to trust your sources a lot of times. But the second you think that you have the truth and you can't be fooled, that's when you need to stop and go back and make sure that that's absolutely fucking correct. That you in fact have the truth and you haven't been fooled. Because man, when you start in saying, here's reality, and it's not, you've lost credibility, and you may be doing harm to the causes that you care about. If everybody gets to look at the left and say, oh, they've all got Trump derangement syndrome, and they've all got the woke mind virus, and we're standing there, and there are people who are saying, you want me dead. Well, maybe they do. Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't care. But as soon as you tell somebody what their motivation is and you're wrong, they get to just dismiss you because you're pretending to know what's in their mind. And if you can demonstrate it, by all means. I'm not, as I mentioned before, if you have a good case to make of what somebody's motivations and intent are, it's absolutely a serious consideration that needs to be there. And you could be right, but if you can't demonstrate it, it may be strategically unwise to mention it all. But yeah, Adam's right.
That's correct. Yeah.
Whether or not somebody's weak-minded, I don't even know what that term means, which is why I kind of touched on it at the beginning.
It's more derogatory. It's like it's like, it's basically like the sheeps of the world, right? They're just a bunch of sheeps. They're NPCs. They can just be swayed by anything. It's like, that's just mean.
It's part of a two-pronged thing. One is the people who think that religion's mental illness, and when he called in, this thing was religion may not be mental illness, but it's kind of for the weak-minded. Like, I was like, what? Those are two prongs of the same confusion. You know who religion's for? It ain't got anything to do with IQ. It doesn't have all that much to do with an accurate understanding of the world. Religions are for people who are frustrated with the fact that they don't know, don't understand, and are awash in this world. And somebody's providing them an answer that a whole bunch of other people think is correct. Why would I have to go do more research if there's 500 people in this church standing up, singing, praising, smiling, and being kind to each other? This is where I need to be. That's where religion is. And not just, they're not all the same. I'm not saying that, like, if you go, if you're going to become a Muslim, that you're going to have the same experience that you do as Southern Baptist. You may or may not have potlucks. I don't know. But for whatever reason, religion, intentionally or unintentionally, stop making it look as if it's a top-down conspiracy theory, an intentional con. But they're providing something that people are lacking. Certainty in a world where there's lack of certainty, confidence in positions, a sense that somebody cares about you, that somebody knows what the right answer is, that someday you might find out what this is all about and God will clue you in, that somewhere there's somebody with a plan watching over this, that there's some sort of cosmic justice there, that bad things happening to good people is a problem, that good things happening to bad people is something that this God's going to take care of. There are tons of complications in the world in which we live that make it easy to understand why religions appeal to people, which is why instead of talking about those things, you will hear me for the last 20 years and maybe the next 20 years talking about, can you demonstrate that it's true? Not that you like it, not that it's effective, not that you feel comfortable there, not that it's your community, not that it's your family. Can you demonstrate that it's true? Because if it's not true, then either it's the case that we need a lie like that, or we can find a truth that serves the same purpose. Maybe secular humanist communities fill the gap for religions without making false claims. Anybody can be free.
100%. 100%. Like, I know so many people who don't even believe in the God claim, but they like their community that they have at church. And they will go and they'll continue to go to those potlucks. They'll continue to go to those churches because that's where their family is. That's where their community is. And that's why it's so important that it's not just like proving a God claim. There's also, that's why there's another show on here called Recovering from Religion, I believe, where, the idea of, coming out of that is a journey for a lot of people. Not everybody has the privilege to leave a small Baptist community in rural nowhere, right? There has to be an ability for us to also serve those people and just be like, well, you don't believe in your God anymore. Leave your entire community. It's like not that easy for a lot of folks. So it's also having that compassion as well and understanding why people get to where they are in the first place. So again, it's why I said being able to look at with empathy on all people and all walks of life and where we all come from is a much more persuasive stance than looking down on people saying, you're just a mark. Can't believe you believe this crap. It's like, no, we've all been our journeys. Like both Matt and I both come from religious theist backgrounds. And we both had to have that journey. So just making sure that we all have that empathy is so critically important. Perfect. I think this one's you.
Okay. I have a question real quick for folks in chat. We had a poll up about whether or not I should dye my beard, and then there was a poll about whether or not what color it should be, and I think it looks like the vote blue is actually winning. I've not in any way said that I will in fact dye my beard or what color I might do it or when I might do it. We're putting these feelers out. Maybe it'll end up being for a fundraiser. Before I've dyed it pink for fun, and I've dyed it pink when we raised $14,000 to send kids to summer camp. We'll see what happens. By the way, if anybody in chat is a subscriber to Ground News, please feel free to contact me and let me know what your impression of Ground News is, because I'm considering subscribing to it. It is a news service that pulls news from a bunch of different sources and assesses the lean and shows the different headlines and how different people are reporting on the same events. And as a news aggregator like that, I think it could be incredibly useful. But if somebody's already using it and feels that it's a good thing, I'd like to know that. If you subscribed and you found out, this is not a thing that I would support, I'd like to know that too.
I would like to know that
$10.
as well.
Yeah. $10 from Chodak Studios. Any recommendations for orgs to look at for getting the word out, like with phone banking for summaries on Project 2025 and or where to get good polling data? Josie, you're queen. Matt, you're gay, homie.
So there's a lot of orgs out there. And when you're thinking about like phone banking and things like this, you're gonna hate me. You're gonna hate me for saying this. The Biden campaign needs volunteers. Those are actual votes calling in the swing states. Like if you want your volunteer targeted and looking at that, that's completely something you can look at. There's also a lot of local organizations, but I would really focus on organizations that are focusing in the swing states. I think that's really, really important right now. Summaries on Project 2025, they're coming out more. More and more orgs are actually doing summaries. I know our organization is coming out with one as well. So I would just keep your eye out on the Project 2025 stuff and polling data, good polling data. Oh, unfortunately, if we had that answer, we'd all be able to say it off the bat. But I think I froze for a second there. I would say it right off the bat, but honestly, I think that looking at the political, is it Real Clear Politics? I think that has the one that has all of the aggregated polls. And I think it's really important when you're looking through polls, just look at good methodology, like how many people it surveyed, if they're reputable. A lot of history, there's a lot of like you can look up and see if polls are right leaning or left leaning. I think it's important for us to be very discerning of the polling data. I personally hate YouGov polls because it's usually only like 500 people. Whenever I see like a YouGov poll, I'm like, nope. not listening. That stuff is trash. So yeah. So I would always look at who's doing the polling and then make your best judgment call.
You didn't do this, but when you said, I genuinely hate you, Gov, as soon as you said, I genuinely hate you, I was like, what the fuck?
Oh no.
$100 from
say
Mouse.
that.
$100 from Mouse. I don't need this $100, but y'all do. Please do accept this digital Benji because y'all do great shows. Thank you. Thanks so much, Mouse. And I will accept that digital
Thank you,
Benji.
Mouse.
It's
Thank you.
definitely good stuff.
$10 from SCJla. I am not going
SJL.
to say that right. SJL. Thank you. SJL. Got it. Thank you. Transmissa might be the more accurate term for hate of trans people, but I think that would confuse more than it informs. I would agree because I've never heard anybody use that term before.
It actually comes up on a search. Loyola Marymount University includes a thing about transmisia and anti-transmisia as an aversion, hatred, or mistrust of people that are transgender, appear to be so, or to those whose gender expression doesn't conform to common understandings. So it's basically more of a fear, distrust than just an aversion.
I like that. Okay. Thank you. I learned something new.
If it doesn't add more confusion, I'm all in favor of it as a possibility. But $10 from Storm Chaser Noah. Thanks again. Yeah, I had the same thought about the Weather Channel. Or is that a different TBC? I also wondered if maybe
the Weather Channel, yeah.
I also wonder if maybe it was so entities like the Weather Channel would have to pay for data to create predictions instead of being public info. Ooh. You know what's weird? I don't watch the Weather Channel right now because I don't have cable. I tend to watch everything online, either on YouTube or in a browser, on a device, whatever. It just didn't make sense for me to have cable anymore. Although I pretty much pay more than cable for less than what I was getting with cable because that's what we've built out of the subscribe to every service. But I will say I don't watch the Weather Channel, but YouTube has been feeding me a number of independent weather channels, like some dude who, lives in Dallas and has got his own Doppler weather radar or his own feed of the stuff and is giving updates and chasing, tornadoes and everything else. And I find it fascinating in small doses. But yeah, it was wild to hear that we really trust the Weather Channel.
We really do. Over 80, it's in the 80 percentile of people trust the Weather Channel. It's just like, it's so popular. It's like the only media
outlet sure they trust it
that people trust.
Or that are we sure they trust it or that they just watch it? Because I've never watched any weather report and gone, yep, that's what's likely to happen. In fact, I hear most of it's yeah, that's like the weather,
Yeah, well, people don't go to the weather. People aren't going, oh, the Weather Channel? What freaking left-wing crap is that? Or what right-wing trash are you looking at?
We all know they're wrong.
Yeah.
They're wrong all the fucking time. It doesn't matter whether they're right or left. They're both wrong.
We're all, exactly. 80%, over 80% of the public like the Weather Channel and are like, yeah, Weather Channel's great. We're okay with that one. I think that's very interesting. I thought it was fun trivia knowledge. $20 from Godfrey and Good. Aloha. I like Josie. Bring her back. In reference to the early call, I just saw the suffix misa. Is it missia? Is that how you say it?
Missia.
I don't know. Missia. Being used for hate. Is transmisia acceptable for a more accurate term for transphobia? Should I only use the latter? Mahalo. And thank you so much. I would always be happy to come back whenever Matt would have me. But yes, again, I'm always good for clarity, but I will always use anti-trans behavior. That is usually what my go-to is. It tends to work better in persuasion.
And I think the pronunciation of the suffix, I think it may be more of a Z sound than an S sound. Misia.
Misia.
But
okay.
I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know.
You're just
Thanks so much,
being Miss
Godfrey.
Transvestisia.
$10 from TLPC, Matthew 18:20, where two or more are gathered together in my name, I am there amongst them. But if it's just you, he won't be able to make it. See, seems true.
Yeah, seems right.
If
to
I was,
me.
I would almost do this, except that it would be maybe be a better video than anything else. It'd almost be fun to take the Bible and make a set of board game style rules out of what it says. So,
Ooh.
Is God there? Well, this verse says he's everywhere all the time. And this verse says he's there if there's two or more of you gathered together. And so because this other verse says he's there everywhere all the time, then this verse about wherever two or more of you gather together in my name, that's irrelevant because he was already there according to this other verse. So we can just get rid of that rule. It's useless.
Yeah. Where's the one where if you do an insult to the other player, two bears will come and rip you to shreds?
Yes.
$10 from Monkey at Typewriter. Thank you so much for the call. Kind of feel like the answer is obvious in hindsight, but worth my time at least. Great show. Now Josie, the commissioner, said there is a Joker in loose in Milwaukee. Yes, I am a commissioner. That is I do hold the title of commissioner.
You're commissioning
Interesting
something.
facts about me. Yeah.
$10 from President Starscream. Shout out to Matt Schrodinger's patience. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is fair. Some of it's down to mood, and some of it's just down to how many times have I been lied to and strung along today on different. So I think maybe if I just stayed off social media entirely on Wednesday, I'd have even more patience. On the other hand, I'd be less informed about what I want to talk about on Wednesday. So, it's a coin toss.
Yeah.
It's why I love bringing in people like Josie who are less likely to get as irritated as quickly as I might.
Yes.
But it's always fun.
Yes.
Like you and Seth and Forrest and even Shannon, well, Shannon especially. But people would tend to look at any of those pairings, Matt and Josie, Matt and Seth, Matt and Forrest. Matt's the one that's going to be the hothead. I know who I am. Y'all act like, it reminds me of the Taylor Swift song, why you got to be so mean, where it's like you point out my flaws like I don't already know them. Yeah, I know this shit. I just don't see it as necessarily too much of a flaw. But my favorite thing is when any of those pairings, I'm the one that is the most patient, which is most likely to happen. I'm sorry. I love you to pieces. And I know you're going through some stuff right now and we miss you terribly. But of all those, the one that's most likely to outdo me on hothead under the right circumstances is Shannon Q. And it's so much fun because by the time you get Shannon to go off, I'm basically sitting here going, wow, I don't know if I would have gone off then, but goddamn, I'm going to really appreciate it and enjoy watching this.
I have had my spicy moments and on the Transatlantic Call-In show, so make sure you tune in tomorrow at 2:00 Central. But yeah, I'll get my spicy moments. Matthew, the person that called in earlier, has gotten and experienced spicy Josie.
Yes,
and
he did.
Now yeah. Yes, that happened. So yes, and it was fun. It was great. And now everybody wants me to throw the spice rack, which is fine. I'm good for it. So 10 euros from God is an atheist. I love it.
Kind of doubt if there was a God. I don't think it could be an atheist unless it was unaware of and unconvinced of its own existence.
Yeah, that's true.
But $10 for Monkey Typewriter. I'm still amazed that Vance got the VP job, though. Well, to be fair, he hasn't got the VP job.
No.
He's the running mate of someone that if they win, he'll get the VP job. I get what you mean. I'd have thought Trump would want his old VP. I thought he wanted Pence to hang around, womp womp, enjoy jokes while you can. There you go.
Love it.
While we can. Absolutely. I should have
But
probably
we
done.
can't.
So
That one's
yeah,
the one.
I don't really use, and I haven't updated my sound effects on my mixer in ages because I don't want this to turn into like, welcome to the morning show where we're here to tell you everything you need to know. We serve at your pleasure. And don't forget what the Republicans want to do. I don't want to do that show. So I very rarely hit the buttons over there.
But it's nice to know you have them.
Yeah. Oh, no. I was a fucking Boy Scout. Be prepared.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. $9.99 from Daniel Robles. Thanks for being here, Josie. I hope you're finding time to care for yourself. We need you. Matt, I'll be praying that your surgery goes well. Just kidding. Best wishes. Wishing you the best. Yes, thank you so much, and I'm happy to be here.
Thanks, Daniel. We only have like 6 or 7 super chats left, assuming nobody else jumps in with one of those. And I'm actually, I won't ask you to not put in additional super chats, but I will say that I need to go down and take some medication. And so I think I can hold out for 7 to 15 more. So if you like double those up, cool. But after that, I'm going to have to get meds no matter what, because my teeth hurt. So $10 from a Crazel. Do y'all still do the monthly Zoom calls? I was trying to figure out where and when those happen, and I can't find anything about them anymore. We do. It's possible that a month got overlooked or I didn't hear about it because I wasn't the guest on there. I only hear about them when I'm the guest. And so I think it's a Patreon feature. Arden, do you have info on this?
It's a Patreon.
What?
Never mind.
The Zoom calls on Patreon.
Oh yeah, I don't know when the next one is. We haven't done one in a couple of months, I don't think, because now Jimmy's mostly focusing on producing the podcast. But I imagine there will be more in the future. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you, voice
There
of
we
God.
go. It's the best answer we got.
$10 from Jeffka. People need to stop harping on JD's previous statements against Trump. They don't matter to his voters. Once you bend the knee, all is forgiven and forgotten. Hence, disagreed with him. Gallows followed. There is some truth to that, but I disagree as well. I think that we need to continue to harp on it because it's going to because JD Vance has already shaken the MAGA confidence in Trump's ability to pick a good VP because of those previous things. And anything we can do to shake MAGA's confidence to possibly not be enthusiastic about voting for Trump is a good thing. So we need to hit them at all angles.
I agree, Jifka, that it probably won't make a bit of difference to most of the base. Once Trump says this is the guy, then that's the guy. Also, people can change their mind and people can be wrong. And it's really easy for him to make a statement. Hey, those were my thoughts at the time. I've since gotten to know the man and blah, 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 blah. And it all sweeps under the rug. So I don't think addressing all of his previous statements is pinnacle. I just think it needs to be done because I'm thinking ahead. If in fact Trump wins, then in 4 years, we have JD Vance running for president.
Yeah.
And if that's the scenario, the right there are people on the right who are not thrilled that it's JD Vance because he's Catholic. There are people on the right who are not thrilled that it's JD Vance because he was a never Trumper. There are people on the right who are not thrilled with JD Vance because of his positions opposing rape and incest exceptions for abortion stuff, because not everybody on the right is necessarily against those exceptions. There's loads of little things. And so if
people hate JD Vance for his Indian family.
Oh yeah.
Anyways, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
But going through and listing the things that he's actually said is important for one thing. At some point in the past, JD Vance absolutely knew what a threat to democracy Donald Trump was and publicly stated it in some of the strongest terms. And between the time that he said that and now, something changed. He needs to be held to account for what changed. If he ends up in a debate with Kamala Harris, she needs to ask him that. You said these things about Trump. If you were wrong, how can we confidently trust your judgment on anything? And if you were right, how can we confidently trust your judgment on anything? That's the type of thing that needs to happen.
Yeah.
I really wish they'd just come contact me for, debate strategy before they do another one, but they're not going to.
Yeah.
There are
there's very
better
few
people to go.
in that
I'm
room.
joking. There are better people to go to for guidance on debate strategy. I'm joking
Well,
just
there's just
because it's
very
my
few
job.
people. Very few people are in that room now.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah. $9.99 from Jimka06. Great show. Was looking forward to Andrew, but love Josie and her wise takes on politics. Matt, thanks for sharing your list of 45s first. Props to the producers, screeners, mods, callers, and chatlings. Agreed.
True
Thank
story.
you.
Huge thank you to our call
Yeah.
screener, to all of
Yeah.
our mods, especially in this. There are times where, we're going to get a barrage of trolls or problematic people. And then there are times where something big is going on in the world and we're trying to figure out the best way for us to address it without causing more trouble, without getting our programs demonetized, which happens over and over. Like a couple weeks ago, half of the content on the network was ultimately demonetized. Just as a reminder, there's information and links down there where you can go, subscribe. You can join the channel. You can go to linemerch.com. You can go to Q&Aline.com / the line debates to apply for the new debate shows like InBoss, which is not dead. Just we're not in the same way. We're not getting very great theistic callers. We're not really getting submissions for potential debates. So we're going to make some adjustments to that. But you can also go to paypal.me / Mr. Atheist, cash.app / $ and Jimmy A. Snow. There's an Amazon wish list. It's all down there in the links. Patreon.com / call the line is probably the best one. And we are building that up to another. I don't know what the current stretch goal is for Patreon.
It's growing though. It's growing fast.
Maybe the next stretch thing on Patreon is going to be my beard or something. All right. On this, would I be correct? Is this El Hison?
What's that?
Would you pronounce this
What
El Hison?
Oh. No. I think it would be El Jensen, wouldn't it? Jisun? Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe.
$25.
Maybe
Thank
it
you
is.
either way. Matt and Josie make a great team. It kills me when folks I love and care about defend Trump and claim both sides are equally bad. A friend equated the insurgency with Biden-Harris funding violence in Minnesota. What?
Oof.
Funding
Terrible.
violence in Minnesota.
Terrible take. Terrible take. Yeah.
I don't even get it.
Yeah, I don't even get it either.
Thank you so much.
They just make up anything at this point. Yeah, thank you. $10 from Stomp. 10. The VA is allowing me to start HRT, but I am terrified about it. I'm getting my fertility squared away, but this is a huge step. Any advice? Love the stream, by the way. I started my hormone therapy through the VA. And if you can get it, go for it. Make them continue to give you your medication. It's really, really important to do it. All VAs are different. Some VAs are incredibly great, and some VAs are terribly bad. But being able to get it is good. So I highly recommend going and doing it. And if you have any issues, they have a LGBTQ liaison that you can call that is connected to other folks like myself, because I'm also the president of the Transgender Veteran Association, American Veteran Association. So yeah, we're doing our best to make sure that trans veterans get their care. Go for it.
All right. I am Click in the next one. There we go. $10 from Nikki D. Great show. Julia Sweeney's Letting Go of God helped me deconvert, wondering if it's helped others. I was already out of religion by the time Julia Sweeney did that. I've heard really good things. I've never met her, which is kind of disappointing because I've heard really good things about that. And I know plenty of other people that are like you, Nikki, where that was a key thing. And it was an important lesson for those of us in the atheist community at the time, because we were doing more and more conventions, and you would have a whole bunch of people come in and give talks. And a lot of them were academic talks. And I remember Margaret Downey came up to me. We were talking at one of these events, and this was after Julia Sweeney's thing, but it's still relevant. And she said what she wanted to see more of was people telling their stories so that people could relate to it. And I think that's huge. And I think we made some of those changes, and it killed off all the conventions. I'm kidding. That is not what killed off the conventions. It was COVID and way too many conventions. It's a great idea. There are other great ideas that people have expressed to me that I've been trying to make sure people do. I'd love to see, I'm on full disclosure, I'm on the board of directors for American Atheists. I still want to see, let's get the main convention floor and take tape and tape out full size in the big room a map of the United States, and then put in some extra areas around the outside and have everybody go stand where they live. Because it will show you, this is not my idea. I cannot remember whose it was. My apologies. I'm not trying to steal it. I wish I could remember, because somebody told me this like 10 or 15 years ago. Have everybody go stand where they live, because then you can look and say, wow, I've been here at this convention all weekend, and I talked to that person over there. They live way on the other side of the country, but I didn't talk to you, and you live right down the fucking street. And that's how you can work to build connections at these national conventions that then translate into local connections.
It's a good idea. I might have to share that with some of the conventions I go to.
I dig it.
$10. Yeah, it's a really good idea. $10 from Stephanie Helms. Best of the day. JD Vance's birth name is James Donald Bowman. So teachers need to use that name until they get permission from his parents to call him as his chosen name. I like that.
Oh my gosh.
Appreciate that, Stephanie.
That is so good, Stephanie.
That's why I still
dig
call
that so
Twitter
much.
Twitter, because
Yes.
like it, I didn't know that we needed to change its name. Like, I didn't until Elon can name and gender his kids right is when I will call it X.
Final super chat
$10
for today.
Yes, and from our good friend Pebble Punk, half dog, half canine. The name is Pokey at Creationist. Oh, the name is a poke at Creationist. Using the phrase half man, half ape is always funny when people have to take a second to puzzle it out. I know, it's a good name. And good luck in coming out at work. I know it can be very scary and intimidating, but you're going to get through it. Live your truth.
All right. This is going to be one of the shortest wrap-ups ever. Let me tell you guys right now, first of all, tomorrow, Transatlantic Call-In Show is at 2 p.m. Central with my wonderful, beautiful, talented co-host, Josie Caballero, and Luxander, who one of these days, maybe Lux and I will get to do a show together as well. Jimmy Snow and Eve will be heading up the Sunday show at 2 p.m. Central, and I'll host the Sunday show after dark at 7 p.m. along with Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels. Next Monday, Skeptalk is going to be Shannon Q. Next Tuesday's Chewed Gum is going to be Alyssa and a guest that we're not announcing yet. And next Wednesday on the Hang Up, there may or may not be a show. Right now, the plan is for me to get back from surgery, get picked up at the airport, come over here, plop down in the chair, and then try and talk with stuff stuffed in my mouth about how I'm feeling and whatever's going on. I'll probably do some stuff related to JD Vance if I can actually do this. Here's my notes for today. First of all, vote.
Yes.
Second of all, don't share conspiracy stuff. And then vote. Don't get mired in irrelevant things. Golf is almost never fucking relevant. It wasn't relevant in the debate. It wasn't relevant on the day after the assassination attempt, which didn't happen, by the way. Vote. Help others get out and vote. Vote. Get involved and participate. Try to care. Try to make sure that you're sticking with the truth, avoiding hyperbole, making the best case so that our side is unimpeachable, so that our side is on the right side, the correct side, not the right as opposed to left, but the right as opposed to wrong. As I noted at the top of the show, we already have the facts, the science, the moral high ground. All we need is to recognize that, stand with it, and push back on those who oppose reality and the facts and the science and morality. Those who think that their view of a better world, they need to own up to the fact that their view of a better world results in the death and harm of real people on a regular basis. That the consequences of what they want is not the shining castle on the hill that they imagine, but an absolute dumpster fire of a world where democracy is a memory. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Make sure to join the Patreon and be a part of this really awesome list of people, if I can point the right direction. This list gets longer and longer every time. I mean, come on. We're going to start doing the monthly Zoom calls, apparently. Yes. Now you're pointing here.